Okay, goodness. Talk about a stressful beginning and showing up late. Sorry about that. Is my audio level okay? I can't hear anybody.
Sounds good.
Ah, there we go.
We're all just giving you a thumbs up.
Ah, good deal. Yeah, my network connection on my streaming machine was giving me fits right there at the end. It was working and then it fell apart. Anyways, always glad to be here.
I thought he was going to change the color settings. He'd have a new top.
Right.
Why do we have all these toys?
Don't worry, none of your customers are watching you guys. You're safe.
Oh, that's good. Hi, Jeff. Welcome back.
Hey, how's it going?
We're having a great time. Glad you're joining us. David just changed
Intermittently.
his shirt.
Your understudy's dressed and ready to go, though.
There you go.
Good. Time
Playing
to
the
Did
role
you guys
of
hear
Jeff
my
today.
Did you guys hear my open? It was really kind of a weird experience on this end. I
We
just
didn't,
show up.
No.
didn't see you at all. And can I remind you, you haven't got your pants on, so don't stand up.
How do you know that?
I got
That's
another
the
webcam.
concerning part. How do you know that? All right. Anyways, hey, so everything's
Jeff?
good. Sound, video.
Yeah, Jeff,
All
I just wanted to let you know YouTube right now, you're not full screen there and I'm seeing a player.
Thank you. Okay. The toolbar is going to show, but we'll be okay on that. Thank you, Mike. All right. Well, very good. I let everybody know I kind of did a little teaser this week on managing spotlights and so forth, and not using the mouse so much inside of Zoom. I really claim that the mouse is the reason there's so many clunky Zoom meetings and Zoom events and so forth, is because somebody's behind the scenes managing it with a mouse, which is a kind of a point name nightmare. And just count the number of clicks sometimes if you are the one in charge of that. The ability, one, to find the person, two, to select spotlight, 3 to select unmute, 4 to lower the hand, and those are all, it's not like point, drop down a menu, check, and go. It's go back. When we used to have to, when you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice, but we have great choices now with ZoomOSC and so forth, companion and there's options and things can go, so much smoother and easier for, us managing it and the audience especially. And I just say, don't accept that that's the norm, that's the way it has to be. There's something behind the scenes, either the lack of knowledge, the lack of, small investment. It doesn't take much of an investment, but needless to say, that it's kind of the tangent I'm on right now. And I thought might be worth spending some time building out that solution. So, let me get that screen set and start making this happening. Is how many of you we're talking about, working with today, BitFocus's companion product, which is free, and that is not synonymous with a Stream Deck. A Stream Deck is an optional piece of hardware that really kind of brings a physical presence to your desktop with real physical buttons from a screen-based, software-based companion. But outside of that, companion is free. It can be easily run on an iPad, any mobile device that can hit one of their emulators via a web browser. And so, that doesn't leave many devices out by any stretch. So there's that. You can run it right on the computer as well. So that's free. The libraries that you add to them from the different vendors who have written to Companion, they're free. So that's from, soundboards, lighting consoles, vMix, OBS, QLab, all kinds of them are written to them, hundreds of them. And then next to that is ZoomOSC, which is now a Zoom company. And, originally developed by Liminal ET or Entertainment Technologies, and they've been acquired, and those products have been acquired. And the same people are still, Andy and team are still the ones, writing it and improving it and so forth. We've seen great things with it, with Zoom and ZoomOSC and ZoomISO. But needless to say, there's some license. There is a free basic version of ZoomOSC with some limitations to it. You can spotlight, but you can't multi-spotlight, for instance. You can hard code names of people that are in your meeting, but you can't dynamically get those names automatically. And so you may have some reasons to move up to a paid subscription version instead, but that's up to you and your needs and desires. But that's what we're going to be working with today. Is I do have a physical Stream Deck, but we'll be working with Companion visually so everybody can see it and go through that as well. So how many of you here, by raise of hand, digital hand, if you will, have Companion installed on the system you're on right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Very good. All right. So we got 7 of 20, and 2 of those machines are on, so 7 of 18. And how many of you either have the free version, which they call Basic for ZoomOSC Basic, and or a paid subscription to ZoomOSC / ZoomISO possibly? Okay, so same. All right. Well, very good. That
John is saying that we can do votes. How do we do votes? John, is that just a poll? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's called a poll. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, a poll.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got enough on my mind today, John.
Can I just interrupt you for a second, Jeff?
Sure.
Being a bit of a tech geek, even more tech geek than some of you here, I may say, with 9 computers in my office at the moment. One of the things that people watching this may not realize is that Zoom is a really power-hungry piece of software. And if you're running a long Zoom meeting and you're trying to do everything else on the same desktop, your desktop will gradually get slower and slower. Because, and this is an advantage of Zoom, Zoom makes sure that the streaming of what you're doing is prioritized above everything else. I have done 6 to 8 hour long webinars, meetings, and quite often, by the time I get to the end of those hours, my machine is starting to run out of resources because Windows is not totally efficient when it comes to organizing things. And I may lose a lot of stuff, but the last thing I'll ever lose is the data going up and down, the video. But what that does mean is that I can suddenly have a situation where I want to click my mouse and I can't even move my mouse for maybe 30 seconds. So this need to be able to take the control off the mouse and put it somewhere else is much more important than people realize, because once you get 6 hours into a meeting and your computer starts slowing down, it's now too late to work out an alternative. You're already committed. Thank you.
Thanks for that share. Yeah, Zoom, I don't want to necessarily translate that to, and maybe it's exactly what you mean, that it's that Zoom is a resource hog, because I don't think it is a resource hog, but it's a really, really good practice to not overburden your system, because Zoom's main priority is to deliver low latency results, right? And at
Exactly.
all costs. And
Exactly.
so it,
and we all have
unlimited-
nice, powerful computers, don't we? And many people out there are going to have much more underpowered computers trying to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we need to give them tools to make it easier so it does share the load.
Yep. Yeah. No, true. Yeah. So I have my primary PC in front of me. I just moved host over to my ISO machine, but actually now I'm going to have to give myself co-host control over here. Anyways, I have primary PC here running, 3 monitors and Zoom and vMix. vMix is number 1 on my task manager. As far as CPU, it's at, let's say 15% right now. Zoom is number 2 at 9 to 10% right now. vMix memory is almost 3 times the amount of Zoom, which is decent, but and GPU as well. But Zoom is number 2 in all categories next to vMix on my machine. And vMix is streaming, and it's ingesting my camera, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 desktops, either locally or via NDI. And so, it's working out pretty good. But needless to say, it's really good point. And, there's Chromebooks out there, right, that don't start off strong at all anyways. And so we have to kind of mind our P's and Q's and try to distribute the workload. Playback systems, when you're going to share video or PowerPoint, should you do it on the same machine or a second machine? As long as they're both in the Zoom meeting, who cares who shares, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what machine is sharing, and it doesn't matter while they're sharing. Anybody can still get spotlit if you want just that person versus the gallery strip next to it. And so you can distribute that workload, or I can email, Tamara, my slide deck. She can be in charge of sharing the slide deck when needed. And Ray, he'll do the spotlighting, and I'll do the talking, just distribute that. And which means, that's a methodology of distribution that's of zero cost, because some people think instantly, distribution of resources is the investment of more hardware. Like, no, unload yourself along with your computer and get help. I think anybody who's been there, it's hard to go back. I still sit here, appearance of being alone, but I'm not. Ray's managing stuff. David Paskin's managed stuff for me for months to unload, my responsibilities. The streaming is behind me now, so that's a little bit more challenging to see when things do change. I should glance back there every once in a while. But needless to say, great points for sure. Any before I get into kind of the meat of the meeting, being the spotlighting and so forth with Companion, ZoomOSC. Any points of contribution, questions, things you've learned that you want to share with others and so forth that you'd like to get out there? I want to give a shout out. I just saw that he's here. Ray Anderson is in the meeting. Hello, Ray. And I don't know if he will or can come in on a camera and wave hi, but he'll say Ray and I worked together at Citrix years ago, and we connected. There he is. Hello, Ray. And
sorry for my tardiness there, Jeff.
Yeah, no worries. But Ray's out in Northern Cal, and we haven't seen each other forever, but who really disconnects these days when it comes to social media and so forth. So anyways, glad to have you here, man. hopefully you enjoy and learn a little something. If you got anything to contribute, feel free to do just that. So welcome. Laura Thompson, how are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to say that, yeah, I've noticed that there is if you have somebody that's got an accessibility software running, Zoom will pull resources even from the accessibility software. I've noticed trying to do some demos to teaching people stuff lately that if you're on a pretty beefy machine, it will just literally just lock the machine. Back to what you're saying about resources.
Yeah. So our accessibility add-ons, software packages, are they heavy themselves?
They are.
Yeah.
JAWS and particularly Freedom Scientific Fusion. Now I know they're working together and trying to get this, and there's some add-ons now for JAWS that specifically work with Zoom, but it's kind of a consideration if you're doing a meeting and you've got somebody that, particularly if you have and Jeff, stop me. You have a presenter or a attendee that is going to be heavily engaged in the meeting other than just listening like a webinar. It's just something to think about.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing. Jake? Oh, are you locked on mute?
Jake.
Hang on.
You don't hear me now?
There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Physical buttons. I forget sometimes. Great to be on with y'all. I have a question. It may not relate to today, but maybe it can come up another time, or maybe someone has dealt with this and has an answer that they can get me offline. I'd really appreciate it. We've been using Zoom to deliver online training for a couple of years now, since COVID. We often are using Ecamm to composite productions, if you will, and pipe those into Zoom, which tends to work fine if we're just piping it to like the person's camera source, if that makes sense. But we've tried to do a share window and use Ecamm's like sharing window feature to be able to have it obviously spotlighted by force so that people are forced to pay attention. And we sometimes get this weird flashing thing that's happening. I don't know if it's a frame rate issue out of Ecamm or our cameras. We're pulling Blackmagic cameras directly through a capture card and then laying over top some NDI footage that we're essentially like, we're using scan converter to take like PowerPoints and stuff and green screen them and lay them over top of the speaker. So I'm not sure if anyone's run into that, but I would love an answer to that. I figured maybe it had something to do with resource consumption or something. Maybe we just need a more powerful computer or a better monitor or something to avoid that issue from happening.
So is this something, did I miss, did you say this has started happening recently? Was that part of your feedback there?
We've had it happen recently, but we've had it happen, as far ago as 2 years ago when we first started using Ecamm Live. And what's weird is it sometimes works perfectly fine the way that you would anticipate it to work. And then other times it starts to go crazy on us. And when you're in the middle of a training session and your trainer's, running and gunning, like they're doing their thing, you don't want to be constantly like, hey, let's pause the session. We're going to try and troubleshoot some stuff and then we'll come back up. So it's been frustrating for sure.
And did you say it's limited to when sharing or limited to a video?
Yeah, so it's only when we, if anyone uses Ecamm Live, they might be familiar with, there are multiple output options, right? Like you can output to NDI, you can output to Siphon, I'm pretty sure. One of the options is you can output a sharing window so that when you go in to share a window in Zoom, one of the options for you is the output, the program output from Ecamm Live, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
But we've had better luck like setting up an Ecamm Live program output just monitor window, if that makes sense, like a digital monitor window, pulling it off to a separate monitor and then sharing that in Zoom. Then we have actually using the native feature in Ecamm, which seems weird to me. So I don't know if we're doing something wonky or.
So, I mean, David Paskin, who's in this meeting, but just away from his desk at the moment, is our Ecamm expert. I don't know if you know David or already, chat with him, but he would definitely be a resource that I'd point you to. So when we see him come back, we'll tap into his brain.
I'll grab him offline because I know we want to talk about companion stuff today. But
that's
great.
Cool.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Jake, one question. Did you try the NDI output of Ecamm and ingesting this? like a virtual webcam?
You know, I don't know that we have done that, which is funny because we do that for other workflows, if that makes sense. So we should try that. How would you, so you can pull in the NDI feed through like a window share or share window, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Oh, no, maybe it only functions as the camera.
Yeah, because we will use
you could like output NDI, take the NDI studio monitor, make it full screen, and then ingest this. Yeah.
And we've done that and had better success doing it that way than actually using the native sharing window feature, which is just weird to me. And that's fine. You know what I mean? I just was curious if someone knew why we have issues with Ecamm's native solution there.
Sharing a whole screen.
Great idea.
Sharing a whole screen, Jake, rather than sharing a window is much less resource utilization.
Okay.
So on the machine that I'm using here, I've got a laptop. I've got 4 screens. I use 2 screens for doing stuff, trying to keep it non-technical. And then I use the other 2 screens if I want to send something somewhere else. Because I can then just send it to the screen and then I can pull an HDMI off. That's much less resource intensive than doing an Ecamm share or than doing an NDI share.
Interesting. Yeah, that's helpful.
Couldn't you even take an HDMI dongle, like a virtual display thing? Right. Yeah. Yeah,
that's exactly what I do.
Copy.
So I have a screen where I share things, and that screen is an HDMI out. It then goes into one of those 1-in-4 converters. One of those converters sends a message to the screen. One of them sends it to a 180M Pro, and the other one sends it to another output that goes into another computer if I need it.
Got it.
But it only costs me 1 screen in far as resources to get all that data out in one go.
Hey, John, if it's relevant, may I ask what your video card is you're using?
The video card, what for the output? It's I think it's something like a 1650 mobile. It's just a Dell $1,200 Dell laptop.
Okay.
I'm using a Dell laptop. I've got a USB 3 interface into a module which allows me to run 4 screens.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, I'll think about that. Another thing we've talked about is potentially putting the Ecamm instance on a separate production computer, using the NDI output like Andre suggested, pulling that in to the trainer who's on Zoom, right, with the active Zoom account, and having a full screen NDI video monitor, you know what I mean, of that NDI feed, if that makes sense, and then trying to just share that in Zoom. I'm just worried that because there's multiple shares happening there, if you will, it's over Wi-Fi. I don't know. I worry that, you know, frame rate is going to cause an issue at some point. We could start in 60 and maybe that's enough that we'd have enough juice coming in. I would hate for video and audio to start lagging or I don't know, you know, I just worry.
Yeah, and don't try to do NDI over Wi-Fi. So full NDI over Wi-Fi is not a good idea.
So hardwire through Ethernet to that's a good idea.
Exactly. Yeah,
we could definitely. I mean, we've got fiber optic here in the office. We could have everyone wired on the same network.
Jeff wanted to tell us how we could do things without having to use our mouse. We've just proved that there are a load more reasons why you want to have these automations because of all the other stuff going on that you won't notice until it goes wrong.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, well, you know, it's not black and white, right? It's not one way or the other, but you know, when you have the option to automate it, I mean, predictability and reliability is huge, right? And you have, at least you know what to expect. Hey, this should work. I mean, like today, right now the names are up. Everything worked great to make the video I dropped and you know, when I'm working and so forth. And then sure enough, today my OSC buttons aren't populating with the names of people in this meeting. I'm just like, oh my gosh. But I just bounced the service and now it's there. So we'll see. Here, Mike, why don't raise your hand real quick, would you? Let's see if it, yeah, it's responsive. Okay, you can drop it. All right. So anything else before we Yeah, once
you
we
just-
get into this, I have a feeling it's going to absorb the rest of the get together here. Because the other thing I'm pretty sure of is I don't want to get heavily distracted by other items in the library of ZoomOSC. They'll be there. But I'm more than willing to get distracted by them after we've completed this project, so say, hey, how do we clear all spotlights? Hey, how do we lower all the hands? Things like that, things that aren't directly dealing with this particular project, we can do at and after the end of the project. But I'm just going to be conscious of trying not to even allow myself to get distracted with all the other things that are super exciting. It's just like, man, once you see them and you see how quick and easy it is, it's like, are you kidding me? I'll never manage a Zoom meeting the same way again. If you're not already using, who's already, I didn't ask that, who's already managing components of your Zoom meeting with a Stream Deck or Companion or something similar? Andre, Robert, Justin, yeah, a few of you already. So there's so much flexibility and dependability on it. And the thing is once you set it up, if you set it up the way we're going to do it today, it works every time in the next meeting you log into and the next meeting you logged into. If you're just an attendee, it will still populate the names on the buttons, but you won't be able to push them and do anything because you're not going to be a co-host or a host if you're just attending. But for those that you're, co-host or whatnot, need those privileges, and you get them, and you can even offer them to somebody who totally doesn't expect it. Hey, have any of you ever done that? It's like, hey, by the way, I'm in your meeting today. If you'll just give me co-host, I'll run all the spotlighting for you and so forth. And to be able to hit a mute all or things like that. Some people are just get blown away. Like, how in the world did you do all that well, that quick, So it's fun to have it in your tool bag for sure. All right. So
Jeff, one quick question before we start. When you checked the buttons, did you check the same thing like happens in ZoomISO, that the gallery doesn't rearrange when the gallery does rearrange? You know what I mean? It's the population on the buttons. Do you have this problem in ZoomOSC as well, or only in ZoomISO?
So was it you who I responded to on Discord?
Yeah.
So my reference to my gallery being really responsive, and when somebody raises their hand, like so here, let me see if it's still working, but let me switch my camera to my Mac, and we'll spotlight me as well for the web and all. Anyways, so that's the Stream Deck page I'm looking at right now on my desk on my Stream Deck. This is the companion. This is where it all starts, right? Is in Companion. So yeah, you can see it right now. It still has some display, and there's either going to be delay or I need to bounce this, and I'm not quite sure why it's having this right now, because up to this point it's been super responsive. But this is what I have been doing to get it to start updating again, and that is as I bounce the module itself, and so I'll disable it and re-enable it, and it should find its way back, and it repopulates there. Question is, hang on. I can see why. It fell out of gallery as well. All right, so Robert's there. Yeah, not 100% sure why it's.
So to make it short and let you go into all the explanations, you experienced the problem yet only on ZoomISO, and now see the first time on this module, right?
So yeah, what's running on this Mac, it's a Mac Mini that's running it. What's running on this is the ISO Pro, which includes the ability to also input your OSC license and have the OSC support on that. Yeah. So that, I mean, that's the platform and the license that it's running on. So I just raised my hand. It fired up, just lowered it. It went away. Go ahead and try. Somebody try it again. Okay. So now, yeah. So now it's bouncing up and down appropriately. And that's what we expect, because these buttons and just describing why are they shifting around and so forth, the bottom left button on this screen, I'm going to blow this up a little bit. No, I'm not. That's interesting. The browser doesn't want to do it that way. There we go. The bottom left corner, the first button that is on the bottom left corner, we basically told it, and we'll get into the back end on it as well. That is saying, I've told it, hey, tell me who in this meeting by name is in gallery position 1, right? So if you change your Zoom software to gallery view, top left corner is box number 1. And the next on my Stream Deck, the next one is tell me who is in box number 2, box number 3. And so I've included 6, the first 6 positions in the gallery. It is being responsive to who by name is in there. Now, coupling that with Zoom's behavior is to know that Zoom, when somebody raises their digital hand, Zoom all by itself moves that digital hand to the very first position. And then the next person who raises their hand to the next position and so forth. So if I stay fixed and say, tell me who's in number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and Zoom's moving people in and out of there, it's magical, because it's one, it's understanding the behavior that Zoom's doing for us. 2, it's our programming that says, tell us who's in that box. And so it might be somebody with a raised hand, or it might be the person who's in position number 1, which is normally the host, because they're the ones who were in the meeting first because they started it, and maybe they're co-hosts and so forth. But it's kind of order of arrival in the meeting in most cases. I mean, there's more about order with microphones.
And this refers to the order of the ZoomISO machine, not of some participant, but of the ZoomISO machine where you have the ZoomOSC running.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my second machine in this meeting, right? It is the Jeff ISO machine. And so I started the meeting as host with the first button there. That's my PC. And then I joined my ISO machine to it. Then Ray joined the meeting, David Paskin joined the meeting, and then everybody else after that. And so the question might be, could you make a whole page of position 1 through, how many buttons are available on the Stream Deck 4, 7x4. So could you make a page of 28 buttons, excluding the bottom left one, because it's out of whack and I'm a balanced guy. I want a rectangle. But anyways, 28 buttons, 28 positions. And the answer is, yeah, of course. You can, I mean, ZoomOSC will let you reference 999 participants, because that's the maximum. Is 1,000 people that can attend a meeting. And so you can, I don't know why you would. I wouldn't want to have to go search through. but now all of a sudden, the videos, I mean, this group specifically, we were a little taken back when all of a sudden these raised hands are getting in our way. And, you know, in a production or managing a production that includes some Zoom participants and so forth. Now, all of a sudden, it's like this behavior becomes a major advantage to being able to have this notice of, you know, somebody showing up with their hand raised. So, Ray, go ahead and if you would, raise your hand. All right, so you notice, you know, what's happening here is it's populated the name. It's also added a PNG file, and we'll talk about in Photoshop. I created it so it would show up in kind of the top right quadrant of the button. But in Companion, it actually shows you the dimensions, which is 72 by 58. And notice as well, the bottom row of my buttons, I've turned off that header that comes from Companion, the 1.2 up top in the top row, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, which are references to those buttons. So if I want to do something to 1.2 or 1.3, those are the references to the buttons. You can turn those off if you want. And so I did on the bottom row in particular, and a few more actually. I turned that header off so that I had the whole button, you know, because when you've got names popping in, you don't know how long they'll be, and you want to be able to see as much of that name as possible, and have it be readable. so I could actually, if I shrink the screen back down and pull this button in, it's at 14 point right now. I could drop it down to 7 point. Now, if I'm sitting right here staring at my Stream Deck, I can still read that with my glasses on, and maybe that would work, and it would give me more visibility to their full name. And you know, I have one customer in particular, which are actually really large meetings, and I'm a voice of God as well, in the sense that, hey, we're going to invite Ray up at this time. I'm the voice. I don't come on camera with this customer, but I'm the voice that invites the next, you know, spotlight or guest, not speaker guest. It's like there's this, you know, kind of important person here who lets the world talk to her, and, you know, they come up side by side. And so I invite them up and so forth. So to be able to press one button. Now, this is a meeting that, you know, right now it's at about the 250 person range. A few weeks ago, it was in the 900 people range in a single meeting. And so, you know, either one of those numbers to me is going to the security button and saying, don't allow attendees to unmute, period. So arrive, unmute, or mute them upon arrival, and don't allow them to unmute. That's a non-changing 2 steps in the meeting that never change. So it's all up to me to, you know, let these guests on stage, if you will, and unmute. And so there's 2 things. One, there's the opportunity that we have to ask those joining the meeting to either allow or not the host to unmute you. Those are the easy ones, right? Because I can just hit unmute and away it goes. But if they haven't allowed you, then the button that I see is to request to unmute, right? Well, if I use the automated button here that unmutes you and spotlights you, that will still send the request. Even if you didn't allow me to unmute you, it will still send the request. And so the benefit of that is I can still have everybody locked down on not being able to unmute themselves, but I can selectively unmute and or even request to unmute. So with this group in particular, I don't know if anybody's ever clicked on allow because I always see that there's request to unmute. I'm like, okay, have it your way. So on the Stream Deck panel that I've built for them, this automated process, I actually insert a like 2-second delay. So I first I send the unmute command, but then I insert a delay of like 2 to 3 seconds before Companion executes the spotlight command. And that is so that they're not fumbling on camera, right? I want them, when I have them spotlit, even in an automated fashion, I want my chances of them being unmuted done. And so 2 to 3 seconds, they're pretty used to getting the little pop-up and responding to it, and poof, even if it's perfectly timed 2 to 3 seconds, they're up and they're ready to say hi back to the host. The worst part would be the host saying, "Oh, hi, Ray," and you can't say hi yet, and so being able to build in that delay with that particular audience. All right, any questions? Let me get back to this. All right, so back to the solution. John, you have a question?
Just an extra comment that don't forget, of course, that you can drag people around to change the order and pin them, and that will then reflect on your Stream Deck as well. So if you've got a set of 3 or 4 people who you expect to be the speakers for the evening, you can drag them to the front of the list as well. Absolutely. No, it's a great point. So yeah, I'm not gonna go do it, but it's exactly that. That is a custom gallery order. If you want to build a custom gallery order, either for you, the admin / host, Zoom host, and or have the all the attendees follow it. You can tell them to follow it as well. But as you move those videos around like a puzzle, if you will, it will absolutely, if the buttons have been programmed to tell you who's there in that gallery position, right? Because if you on the same hand, there's a, well, I'm going to probably mess up the terminology. It used to be called the index or whatnot, but it's the order of the arrival. There's an ID for order of arrival that never changes. Doesn't matter where you put them. If you're displaying the name based on that index number, it won't change dynamically. But if you do it based on the gallery position, it will absolutely update on the fly. So it works really well that way. All right. So seemed like, at least half of you anyways were familiar with, Companion. And as I share the screen, I just point out that, all these buttons, this is what runs the show is, I start the pre-show that calls a script that's saved and written and saved in vMix. Same thing with the start stream, go live, cuts the cameras, adjusts the audio and so forth, throws up the lower third 2 seconds after I, come on camera, puts used to put bugs up, for the DVE store and the Zoom test kitchen. Now I've put those on the monitors behind me. So I shut the bugs off. But, and then the post-show rollout, killing the stream and toggling to fade to black. And then my office lights here, I think this IP address changed, so I don't think that works anymore. But, and then these, all my green backgrounds are cameras or video output, from these are iPad and this is vMix, and these are screen captures. I don't have my PTZ up there right now, but and then there are some of these, kind of clear all the spots, lower all the hands, and some kind of quick presses for quick fixes. We're focusing on this bottom row right now, and then there is my mic toggle as well. And I have that not toggling my Zoom mic, but toggling my vMix input, which gets me in trouble sometimes when I'm an attendee. The admins, the hosts, will mute me in Zoom because my microphone looks open, right? But I'm muted in vMix, but they don't know that. So sometimes I have to change that.
So anyways,
Jeff, can I just have a quick comment, Robert, here?
Sure, Robert.
I think it's pretty obvious to you and people who use Companion, but people who are new to Companion, maybe it's not so obvious that you're managing different apps at the same time. You're not just managing Zoom.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And that, I'll dig a little deeper on that, because that's where, I mean, you're seeing it when you're seeing this page in particular, and I am as well, as this is all this from, all these buttons, the top 2 rows and the first 2 buttons on the third, that's all vMix. That's possible because of the vMix module. And that vMix has written the ability for their product to work with Companion, and therefore you can add their module. These are the bottom row, and the top 2 are ZoomOSC wrote a module for it as well. And so it's multiple. It could be soundboards, lighting, it could be a number of different things. And so
Jeff, maybe you show the connections tab once.
Yeah, that's where I'm going next, is to go, how does that all make sense? So when you go from, let's say, let me just get to a kind of blank page. When you start at a blank page, you go, well, what do you want to do? And so right now, broadcasting out there's my PIP and the screen capture of my Mac, and I want to cut to my vMix camera input that you normally see me on. And so that requires a vMix module. So this is already here because I've added it, but if you were just getting started, you wouldn't have anything listed here. And you would you'd want to add the vMix module so that you had the capability of doing everything vMix made available when they wrote that module to work with Companion. And so you would go over here and you would add a connection and go to the search, because there's a bunch. I mean, there's a ton of vendors out there. And so you'll just start with a search. And in this case, we're talking about vMix. This microphone is so in my way. So we go to vMix, and you can see that it filters it down to Studio Coast vMix, and I could click on add and add that. And I can add multiple instances. They just have to be uniquely named is all, if I had a reason to do that. And I have had a reason. There's 2 companies in particular that I freelance to that they bring 2 vMix racks, one, server 1, server 2. But when I show up, I have to program, the show into vMix and the stream decks and so forth. And so I have a vMix A and a vMix B, and this stream deck is running physically anyways, vMix A, this one vMix B. But when I'm cutting a camera on vMix A, it's switching it in both vMixes, A and B. And so anything I switch, or if I go to B, it switches it in both. Well, those are on 2 different IP addresses, right? Those are, separate computers and so forth. So in Companion, when I program a button to say, hey, cut to that camera, I have to say, cut to that camera in vMix A, put in the second action, cut to that camera in vMix B. And so it doubles my actions, but it keeps everything in sync, because vMix A is streaming the primary stream to YouTube, and vMix B is in fact streaming the backup YouTube stream, which nobody sees until YouTube servers decide, hey, we got a problem ingesting from your primary stream. We're going to switch it over to B or the backup stream. And so the audience never knows. And I don't even know that YouTube makes that change. and so it's super slick to be able to do it. So you can do it. And that's exactly how I uniquely name 2 instances of the same module, vMix A, in this case, vMix B, and manage that appropriately. So you'd add vMix if you wanted to dig into today's work. You can do a search for Zoom. And there's a deprecated module that's still out there, commands that are no longer supported, but through this deprecated module, I guess. So get ready, make sure you change it and get it updated. But this is the latest module, name is ZoomOSC/ISO. And so you add that. If you have a question about it, just pop it up and it tells you more about those modules as well. And so then you add that. So, and I have multiples there. Those of you who were here with when Trevor and Madeline performed their viola and violin a few weeks ago, I'm working with Trevor on, if everything goes right, I'm going to be from my studio this Sunday night. They have another performance that some of you may have gotten the invites to. I'm going to be switching his technology here on my Stream Deck while he's in New York, being able to focus on playing and not having to be distracted by the technology. So that's kind of, we're testing and practicing that. So that's why I've got some Trevor instances of OSC as well. Right now I've got them disabled. All right, so anyways, you find that, you add that module. Now that you have the modules, you know, Zoom, could be a Behringer module, could be, you know, your smart home stuff. Some of the smart home devices have written to it, whatever the case may be. You can add a regular button, or many of the vendors out there will deliver to you presets. And so in vMix, I can go to presets, and these are just, this is like no programming necessary type stuff. So here I can say, I'll go to overlays, keep it simple here. And I'll say program one overlay. So I'll say I want to turn, it sounds like that will let me turn on overlay one. And so I'll leave that. And it comes with the command that, or the action, says toggle overlay one on program, which is program out. And then it says, tell me what input you want to toggle. And so in vMix, I have one called lower third. And so I give it that name. And if I want to test it out, let me go back to my regular camera. And if you watch on screen and I test this, I'll press the button and there it is. And so, and that overlay I know will automatically disappear in like 7 or 8 seconds. And so that is good to go. So that's the ease of doing it. So if I wanted to do something else, if for instance, I'm on the Mac screen with my PIP right now, you go, hey, Jeff, why don't you tell this button to change your camera and do the overlay? And so you can drop down the list. These are this is changed in Companion lately. So this is a recently used drop down. This isn't what you're limited to like in the whole library. This is recently used versus browsing what's available. And so I'm going to, you could do a search and it searches all your modules, or you can click on vMix and see everything they have available. And so with that, if you don't know, you don't know. You don't really know what to search. So I'll say send input to preview and or quick play input to program. That sounds fast. So I'll say do a quick play. Go there. It's the only thing it wants to know is what's the name of the input. And I have one called, actually this one is MV_mycam. And there we go. Now that's out of order, you know, right? It's a top to bottom process. And so it's going to do my lower third before it does my camera. And so now I can drag that up and it'll do my camera, and then it'll do the overlay. I'll scroll up, I'll test that button press. You can see in Zoom, it changed my camera. It popped up the overlay, and away we go. Okay, so that's just the basic concepts. The actions are not limited to a single module. So if I want this button to do something with a camera cut on vMix and a lower third and spotlight me in Zoom, you can tie that right in there as well. So you could browse, you could go to the Zoom module, the OSC module, and at that point, choose spotlighting options as well. You can shortcut that and go to spotlight. And you can see here that you've got, unspotlight, toggle spotlight, and so forth. And so I could add that. So now in a single button, I've combined modules from 2 vendors. And so I can affect something in Zoom directly, and vMix as well. And I can change volumes. It's limitless at that point. That's why I think, Companion is so powerful compared to the Stream Deck app that, is powerful in its own manner, but not across the ecosystem that, from smart homes to production devices and manufacturers and so forth. So anyways, let's see, Robert, you've got your hand up and I'm seeing this probably has to do with what I just saw in chat too. What do we got going on out there?
Don't want to disturb you with the chat because that'll digress you into a different path. But just on what you were doing just now, can you just confirm that you're actually feeding your camera into vMix and taking the feed from vMix back into Zoom to get those overlays?
Yeah. So I have my PTC here. So I can't get everything on this camera, but if I say, that's my camera, that feeds into a PCIe capture card that's in my PC under my desk. That is brought into vMix. It's actually this input, and this input is, that's the mic. This input called my cam is the raw footage, if you will, that then feeds on one of the layers on this multi-layer next to it. So with that, yes to your question. So camera, PC into vMix, and then vMix on the output is, if I go back to that, this external button, the red external button, when I click that, it provides a video out feed to to the computer as a webcam. And then if I go, that one's not going to work. Sorry about that. When I go to the video settings in Zoom, I do this with a share screen instead, it'll work a bit better. This is, If I go to the video settings here, not working, then the camera is vMix video, which is that output from vMix as well. The audio similar, but I'm just using one of the virtual cables for the audio out of vMix into Zoom. Is that what you're looking for, Robert? Just confirmation on that?
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. All right. So back to this project. Any questions about kind of just the basic workings of Companion and how it does what it does? Because we're going to dive into this particular project now.
Just a reminder to people who don't want to buy the Stream Deck, you can get the audio. I mean, you can get the same controls if you're using a tablet or a PC or something like that, using the emulator.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So I'm going to log into my tablet real quick, just in prep. But go ahead.
You can also shift click in your browser to see if a button is working. So you don't need the emulator web page.
You know, the latest version of I don't know when it changed. I don't want to say latest version as in just that one, but lately shift click doesn't work anymore for me. And you have to so if
Really?
I go to Mac Screen 1 and I go to hang on.
So my experience is you first have to click into the window, then shift click onto the button and it goes red. Then you see that it's doing an action.
Yeah, you know, I just found out something. I use Synergy to have a single mouse and keyboard across my Mac and PC and my other PC and my other Mac. It doesn't work through Synergy. Synergy is the break spot because I just reached over there to the connected mouse and keyboard and it worked fine. But it with Synergy, you know, with Synergy being the cause of my breakage anyways, I started using this test press as well. So if you have the button you want to test it, like I'm on my camera right now. If I go to screen 2 and do a test press, you'll see that I switched over to that screen. And so it gives you a real test. Shift click, to Andre's point, is exactly what test press button is. They're synonymous. So kind of pick your passion on being able to do that. Now, the other thing that you can do is
we didn't
can
see
bring
the
up.
companion. Could you
What's
please show
that?
this again? We didn't see the companion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if I go back here. So the test press button is up top. So select the button you want to do it, hit test prep, and it will test it, or the local keyboard and mouse shift click is the same as test press. So
I think this button was there all the time, but I did never notice what was written on it.
Test press?
Yeah,
I had never really noticed it before, so I don't know if I didn't notice it or if it's kind of new. but I was forced to find a solution because this remote mouse is not doing the shift click anymore. So,
great, learn something new.
Yeah, I think it's the shift key. You know, the shift keys, control keys don't map the same over to a Mac when I'm on a PC keyboard. I think that's the breakdown. I don't think it's really Synergy. I think it's the mapping of the keys. Anyways, where was I going to go? Okay, so if we go and build this, what page was I going to do? Well, I'll just use what we've got. So whether you're building a whole page of buttons to represent a larger portion, fact is if you knew that the meeting you were going into, you were only going to have the primary speaker spotlit and one guest side by side, and they go away, and the next side by side comes up, and the next side by side. There will never be 3 spotlights, just 2, primary speaker and or primary plus a guest. You only need one button, because where's their digital hand going to put them? In position 1 in the gallery, right? And so there's not a need to see a bunch. Now, the speaker and myself, what do we look at if we're looking inside Zoom and we don't have this kind of solution? You know, she's looking at the gallery view and she's seeing, or maybe the top of the participants window, she's seeing that there's several questions left, right? Several raised hands. But I don't have to see all those on my Stream Deck. Maybe I'll build 3 buttons or whatnot. Out of the hundreds of people that are in the meeting, because if you, Ray, if you'll raise your hand, you're not in the first button position right now. No, you're not now either, because this is actually makes a good point. Is if I go to Mac Screen to and show you this. This is the Zoom client from ISO. And because it's not currently in gallery view, Companion ZoomOSC has no way to know who's in what position. And so if you've either been here, done that, you totally get what I'm saying. If you haven't and you end up there, you go, why aren't my buttons updating? Go check and make sure that your OSC machine, the one that's running OSC, is in gallery view if you're looking for a result based on gallery view. It goes hand in hand. Yeah,
Hey, Jeff,
David.
I built into my spotlight button an action so that after it spotlights and unmutes and lowers their hand, it immediately sets my ISO back to gallery view.
Exactly. Yeah. So my my off my for sure my off stage. So my off stage list of actions does the same thing. Is oh boy, having a terrible time with this mouse. I think it on stage. Yeah. So my last action here is global actions basics, and it says set gallery view. So unmute them, add the spotlight, set gallery view, and then the off stage, I'm sure, does the same thing. Mute them, unspotlight them, lower their hand, and then set gallery view. And so it throws it back. There, I can see I used two different calls on that one. That one is directly called set gallery view, and I think this was an option. Yeah. So that's some global actions, and I get some clarity from Andy on why it exists in two different places. And I got to double check if they both work. I'm pretty sure they do, but needless to say, that's the thing is we know we want to, let's say, unmute them, and we know we want to spotlight them, but where does that, are there any exceptions on anybody in the meeting that they won't get changed to spotlight view? And the answer is no. Everybody will get changed to spotlight. Now, that's not to say they can't go change back to gallery view, right? Take their mouse and change their view back to gallery view, but we can snap them into spotlight view, including the OSC ISO machine. And so now it's in spotlight view because we use the button to spotlight them, and that's Zoom's behavior, is the spotlight. But we know that there's a dependency from ZoomOSC that says, and Companion, the way we've programmed it, we're dependent on seeing gallery position accurately, which requires ZoomOSC to be in gallery view. So that last command, say, put that machine back in gallery view. And so it keeps our tools up to date while we're managing the meeting accurately as well. All right, so in the first position on this, can you guys see that okay, or should I blow this up a little bit? Let me do that. So the first button is selected, and it's, the property here is the button text. What do we want it to say? And here it says, I typed in hand number 1. So, that's hard-coded hand number 1. This \n is actually real code. Most coding languages respect it, is a new line. It forces a new line. And so hand 1 will always be on the top line. Oops, my wifey, she'll appreciate that. you'll see that all of them have hand 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that, there we go. So the first line is always, no matter how long or short somebody's name is, hand is always on its own line. And that's because of that \n, okay? Then we get into what's referred to as a variable inside of Companion and ZoomOSC. So ZoomOSC has exposed a dynamic variable based on which attendee's name is in that slot of gallery position 1. And that's the reference. Now, you can handwrite that, you can hand type that if you want, but there, Andy and teams already put them in presets. And so if you find a preset for gallery position 1, drag it onto your button interface, you end up with this variable there. And so if we do that, as a matter of fact, let's take this blank spot and go to presets, ZoomOSC, and then you can select from gallery. They're already here. I mean, they're even populated in the presets. And so you can say, I want to see who's in position 1, and you drag that there, and you can see the code's there. It'll say it comes with gal POS 1. I changed that. I just typed over it and typed in hand number 1 because I'm using it for the hand raise value. But if you scroll down, the action is already there. So when you press on this button, the workflow thinking in ZoomOSC these days is really focused on select and then execute what, right? So select a user or more than one user, and then do what? Spotlight. You can be very specific. You can say select one or more, and then spotlight or mute or this or that. Or it could be more action-based that says, I have a button that says on stage. And so it's a combination of, I can take all 3 of you, let's say I get 3 hands up, I select all 3, and I bring you on stage. Go ahead. There you go, Robert and David. So I'm going to scoot my screen over, shrink it down. I'm going to select. I know I need to. I'm going to cheat here, and that is I just I have a button on page 4 that changes from single selection to multi-selection. I just put it in the multi-select mode. And so without getting too distracted, I just told it, hey, let me multi-select. So I select 2 of you, and I say, go on stage, bingo. So it adds to an existing spotlight. I have them programmed to add, but you go, oh, that's not what I want. I want to, if there is an active spotlight, I want that thing gone because this is a mistake, like the view we're looking at right now. So you add an action, a first action that says clear all spotlights, and then spotlight the 2 that I had selected, right? And so that's the power of Companion, is just add from top to bottom exactly what you want as a result. And so did you guys mute when I spotlit you? Because it should have unmuted.
I muted.
You did. Okay, yeah. Because it should have spotlit you and unmuted you. Go ahead, David.
The single selection, multi-selection, do you have that set up as a toggle switch? Because I know how to. It's the toggle action. So if I go, I'm going to remove you guys. Go back to the bigger screen. And this button here is they give us the ability. So the selection method, you can make it single or multi, or you can just tell it to toggle.
and when it toggles, then it'll change the text and let you know whether it's multi. If I push the button here, it
But
changes
you
from
pull in singles. Oh, toggle selection method. I see.
Yeah. Now you could also there's if I go back to this first page, well, here. Let's see. Let's go to this multi-select. I can put it in latch mode as well, latch/toggle. And latch mode is you press it once, press and release once, it's latched. And the next step is, what do you want to do? So instead of toggling it, I want to put it in when I'm latched, I want it to be in single select mode. And when I'm unlatched, let's see if this selection is there. I have to selection method. I don't see it. So look this up real quick. There we go. All right, and so when it's latched, it's single select. When it's unlatched, it's multi-select, and so then I can push it. You see the yellow border? That means it's latched. It's in single. When it's unlatched, it's multi, and so if you don't latch a button, you can have actions while it's pressed and actions when you release it. But if you latch it, you can press and release, and it's locked pressed, and press and release, and it will unlock it and release it. And those can be two completely different sets of actions.
Could you go over that one more time, the latching? Sorry.
Yeah. So imagine this being the issue. You go on a Stream Deck button, I deliver you a button that I tell you, oh, here's a good real world example. Push to talk. When you're on a walkie-talkie, while you're pushing, you can talk. But the moment you let up on it, they can't hear you anymore, right? You can still be talking, but they won't hear you. That's a press and hold. Like, you have to hold it. Otherwise, it's done doing what it's been programmed to do. Instead, you say, you know what? I hate that feature. I just want to click this button that goes in and latches. You know, those buttons that they're this long, and then when you press them, they're half the height, and then you press them and they're double the height. That's a latch. And so it lets you
How do you set
press
that
the
up
button, take your finger off of it, never have to worry about it, but you're always being listened to from the microphone if I stay to the walkie-talkie thing. But when you press it again and release it, then it will mute that transmission. Same thing with any button here. So sometimes on a Stream Deck, I can build a button to mute and a separate button or second button to unmute. And you go, man, you just burned 2 buttons on a limited number of buttons per page. And so you could create one button in latch mode that when it's pressed the first time and it's latched, you said unmute. So now just talk freely. You don't have to keep finger on the button. But when you're done talking, press and release again, it unlatches it, and the commands to under the unlatch section is to mute. And so you unmute, unlatch. If I were to build this super quick. I guess first, does it make more sense on the latch piece of it, David? I want to make sure that
I completely understand it. So I set up a button just now, a selection method button to toggle between single and multi, and now I've got it. It's like doing a little dance on my screen here, and I'm not sure why it's flashing.
Now,
red.
watch this. So I'm going to, right now I'm latched, and it changes on when it's latched, it's in single select. When it's unlatched, it's multi-select, and I'm in the latch mode. And so I'm going to scroll up here, and I'm going to press
Where did
this
you
button.
find that latch action though?
Oh, it's this checkbox right in the top left, right under the edit button 416. Right under that, it says latch/toggle. I don't know if I have. I used to have. There's the big pointer right there. So if you tell it, hey, be work in a latchable mode, then what it does is it changes the press actions and release actions to latch actions and unlatch actions. So if I'm in the latch mode and I press the button and then I press it again, it stays in each mode. But if I say, hey, kill that latch action, and I press, there's the press, but my finger has to stay on the mouse. And the moment I let my finger off the mouse button, boom, it goes back to the other mode. It goes into single and goes back to multiple. And that's all about, while I hold the mouse down, it stays because it's not in latch mode. When I let it up, it'll instantly go back to the release action. But if I go, I don't want to have to hold that stupid thing, then that's a perfect reason to activate the latch mode. So now I can press the button once and put it in single, press the button again and put it in multiple.
I get the same exact effect as that, but just using toggle. Right. So here I've got it.
Oh yeah. Because Andy's team wrote a function that is a toggle. I mean, so he has kind of a mute, unmute, or a toggle, or in this case a single select versus multi-select, or a toggle. He's taken this need to understand latch and companion away and just says, use toggle. Now, the problem with toggle is if you don't know what its initial state is, it's just going to toggle it. You might be expecting the mic to be muted, but if it's unmuted, you're going to toggle it off when you really intended it for it to come on. And so I function often more explicitly than implicitly, and toggle is a bit more implicit than latch. Latch with an absolute command gives me guaranteed results. Yeah, Tamara.
So when you do this on the Stream Deck, I can set different pictures to each of those toggles.
You can. So
here.
Yeah, so the record button in particular is it's a empty text button. I didn't type anything. So if I do type something, you'll kind of see. Let me make the font bigger. You can see it, pounded on top of that. So I left the button text empty. I didn't need it. And instead, I went here to browse. It says, hey, if you browse and you have an image that's 72 by 58, browse for it.
Hiding that. Your circle is hiding that.
Oh. So the browse button here, I have it defined already, so I can actually hit the trash can and it will delete that PNG reference. But if I needed to assign it, I would just click on browse, go find the picture file, and it would insert that. That is 100% graphic, no text in the record button. And what's also nice, and if you go to the spotlighting piece here, somebody raised their hand. Okay. Get this back to gallery view. You can see that text and a graphic are part of that. And so that in Companion, and this comes with the preset, by the way. So if you drag in gallery position 1, gallery position 2, gallery position 3 from the ZoomOSC presets, these feedback pieces are like built in, and you can use them or not. It's all your choice, but you don't have to go find them. It's way easier to delete things you don't need versus having to go find something you don't know what they're called. And so so this button was brought in, and I think these are all the original, with the exception of I tweaked the graphic a little bit. But there's feedback that says, hey, for gallery position 1, if the mic is live, do this. And so the this is change the background color of the button to red and the text to white. And those are available because they've been selected. There may be other things, and there are. You can when the mic is live, you can change the text, the font size, add a PNG text alignment and PNG alignment as well. And the two that have been selected to tweak are the color of the text and the background. If this one is super similar, it says, if gallery position 1 is the active speaker, do something different as well. If gallery position is the hand raised and so forth. So here's the feedback choices. If they're selected, if their mic is live, if their hand is raised, if their camera is off, and if they're active speaker. So camera off is like super relative to me, right? Because I can tell the button to show me your hand is raised, but if I allow it to make your background red, so your hand is raised, so I have a yellow hand on a red background, I can't spotlight you because your camera's off. Like, if that's the settings I've set here, the moment your camera turns green. So that might be my indicator to send them a direct message in the chat, right? Say, hey, please, or click the button that says, request video on. And, but some super useful, feedback mechanisms there. So the one that,
Hey, Jeff, real quick question about that. I've found that if they don't have their video on, they don't even show up for me in here. Is that because in Zoom, I have hide
non-video users?
Is that why?
Yeah. If you turn that off, and if somebody wants to, John, if you can turn your video off, but also raise your hand. So on my Stream Deck, you can actually see it on the bottom left corner of my Stream Deck on screen right now. I've got 2 hands that are raised, 3 hands that are raised, but all 3 cameras are off because they're red. And so it's a combination of feedback mechanisms that let me know more than just they have something to say. It's they have something to say, but they won't be on screen. So if I'm like, hey, that's fine, the host, my customer, says, oh, I'll talk to them. They don't have to have their video on, but it lets me, the voice of God, know, hey, we're going to invite Ray up next, who is not on camera but would like to ask you a question, right? And so it just gives me the cues of maybe how to invite them up, whether it's audible only or video, or to send them a message that says, please, turn your camera on. It's required in order to speak with the host today, or whatever the case is. So they can be used for a number of different things. The other thing is I haven't tested this, but I'm pretty sure. Hang on, let me. If they were in that red mode, which is the camera is off, that's that one. I'm not going to get too distracted with it, but much like unmute, when we go on stage and unmute, we can also toggle their video or turn their video on. Now we can't turn it on directly, right? But so if I take I'm going to change my unmute just for the sake of saving a little bit of time here, and change my unmute to video on. Now, Justin, if you'll turn your camera off for a second, I'm going to select you on my Stream Deck. I'm doing that. And now I'm going to attempt to bring you on stage, which should pop up a video request on your screen. Tell me if that does or not. Did that ask you to turn your video on?
It sure did.
Yeah. So, so it did that when I've got it. I've told it to do that when I press the button, bring you on stage. That might not be my preference. I want to know that camera's on prior to spotlighting you. And so, because you may have walked away for all I know, right? And so you could build a whole another row of buttons that are really aligned, you know. So for gallery position 1, you know, you could have this unmute request, video on request, unmute request, video on, you know, so you could independently send them these requests to turn on their video just by pushes of buttons, which is perfectly accurate and way faster than writing a direct message in the chat. You know, I mean, can you accomplish it other ways? Yes. But if you can see that they're red with their hand up, you hit the unmute request and video on request, and you know it's popping up dialogues on their screen. If they're responsive, perfect. Send them on stage. If they aren't responsive, you can lower their hand and away they go, right? And so just so many different ways to make things work for you. You can end up with a lot of buttons really in short time, but if they're really well organized, they can make perfect sense. Justin, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple comments. And
sure.
First of all, the reason that I didn't actually get spotlighted is because in Companion, it runs all of those commands right at the same time because there's no delays.
Oh,
so
no, it's a great point. On this test, I took out some delays. Some of these but I have delays built in, which is where you're heading, right?
That was where I was heading for this particular comment, but I had other comments that
it does. And when you have stacked actions, I'm really glad you brought this up, because normally I'll find that I was trying to push Andy's coding that says just how fast will it do it, right? And will it do it reliably? Because sometimes you can have 4, 5, 6 actions, you know, it's not a limit, that try to squeal by so fast that it can't. And so it literally just misses them. And so you go, God, why did it spotlight? So here, I'm going to select. I'm going to select 3 and say go on stage, and because I have no delays in there right now, and so it.
Did we just lose Jeff?
Jeff, did you accidentally mute yourself?
Yeah, you did. We can't hear you, Jeff. Hey, while he's fixing that, anyone have any idea why this button is blinking? I can't get it to stop. This guy right here? I don't know.
So I'm back. So you are single.
So it's just a regular button.
You're out of gas.
Yeah, I think so. I have the same exact button. I copied this button. I put it on this page, and it's not blinking. But this one is, and I, for the life of me, can't figure out why.
Single 24. Well, so I'll say troubleshooting cue number 1. Can you hear me now, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. So on the top, the background is set to black, and it's also blinking red. So it's to me, that makes me go look for a reference to a red background somewhere, whether it's on the feedback section or something like that. I don't know what the answer is, but my visual indicator is the background should be black and it's blinking red. So let's go see if we can scroll down and find something referencing a red background. So there's text properties there, but no background properties. Huh. Yeah, maybe something built into companion.
And again, the same button over here.
What's the action?
It's that
action
toggle.
relative to?
It's that toggle.
Oh.
Was this the button you were playing with the toggle and other stuff with earlier?
Yeah.
I would just press it again. I'm thinking maybe it got stuck in
funky
some funky state.
That's what I was thinking.
No, I've been pressing it. See how it changes from single
hit
to
the
multi?
test press on the interface as well, maybe just in case you're doing it physically. See if yeah, that's
I've programmed hundreds of buttons and never seen that.
All right, I'm restarting my computer.
Yeah, that's wild. Okay.
So, Jeff, one of the other things I did want to comment on is you were talking earlier about latching. One of the feedbacks is you can actually change what it looks like for latching, so you could put a different image when it's actually latched, so you know other than that yellow border that was around the button.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, and that is in their the internal module, right? Because latch is part of companion. It's not ZoomOSC. It's not, it's not a vendor. It's companion themselves, and so the name of their module, if you will, when you're looking up.
Hey, Jeff, real quick, David's still spotlighted.
Yeah, that's there we go. Max screen 1. Let's get back to Jeff. When you're looking up, all the different vendor modules here, one of them's called internal. You may say, well, what is that? Where did it come from? It's built into Companion, and that's where you can affect the Stream Deck, surface brightness, and set the surface with index to page, and just a number of different things you can investigate. I'm not sure which one it is to affect that latch color, but
it is called when button is push/latched.
I have a button press, button release, button.
I find the easiest thing to do is just to search at the very top.
Yeah. So I typed in part of the word latch, and it's internal on this version doesn't come up with anything.
You're in the action section, it appears, potentially not the feedback section?
Yeah, that's true.
So if you go down to feedback and click browse, you'll actually get that when the button's latched.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so available in feedback. Yeah, so when it's pushed or when it's latched. Yeah, cool. And so then when you add that, you then have the flexibility of this bank and what number and this page or which page, and then you can affect again PNG, text alignment, and so forth. So you can know that it's latched, and that's important to know. I mean, when something's latched, you want to know it. I mean, when you're unmuted, you want to know, and when you're muted, you want to know. And so change the color, change the icon, whatever the case may be, but you can make that happen. So back to let me still on field 1. That's horrible. But needless to say, I think really talking about the characteristics of the system, I'll share with you some of the things I went through. I'm trying to figure out things like, I think I'm selected on the Stream Deck. Am I really selected? Just because I think so because of some color change or whatnot on the Stream Deck doesn't necessarily translate to ZoomOSC knows that I'm actually selected. And so I would go to, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can go to variables. That's not where I went. I went to connections to the module, to the OSC ISO module, and I would click on this $sign, which pops up a window of all the variables available in ZoomOSC. All the participants up to 999, and then the groups and positions, and then finally some output statuses and so forth as well. So I would check, and so if you want to see things happen dynamically, one, you can see the order of arrival, Jeff, Ray, David, Frank. That's the order of arrival and their IDs. If we went to the next section here, then this is the selected callers in groups, the selected number of callers, and so forth. So in this case, if I have just Ray, if you'll raise your hand, just Ray raise his hand for the moment. There we go. All right.
I was busy rejecting somebody.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just called on you on the fly. So you can see me as the active speaker. Am I not looking in the right spot here? You're in gallery position 3. Oh, hang on. There we go. So now you're in gallery position 1 because your hand's raised. I switched my ISO machine back to gallery view. And with that, you can actually confirm, what is it that ZoomOSC knows, and these variables, because this is a very live page of who's there and so forth. So if you think you've programmed a button that should be displaying Ray or David in position 1 and 2, then come take a look and see if they're in, position 1 or 2. And because it'll tell you what it knows. It's, this is kind of the raw dynamic data behind the scenes versus what you're assuming, that it knows. And so kind of digging into the real story, if you will.
Could you shut up? You can also take those variables and put them on buttons as the text.
Yeah, that's where we started when we got after this button.
No, wait. Can you go back?
Go back to what?
To your mom, please. How?
I'm missing. Anybody?
And that's how we deal with people who Zoom bombs.
I see. Eject. I see. Yeah, thanks, Ray, for bumping them out. Yeah, and the other
3
thing.
in a row, and there's one in the waiting room that I doubt.
Yeah, this late in the meeting, and they're not a recognized name. We probably pretty safe. All right. Okay. All right. So yeah, the variable name is up there for, gallery position 1, and that's why, it changes on the fly. If Ray lowers his hand, that will go back to Jeff, and somebody else raises their hand. So it's super dynamic in the sense of shifting and keeping it all up to date. So kind of imagine this train, you take the first one and put their hand down and they shift over and they shift over and they shift over. They're just moving along the gallery there. So do you have any particular questions that are coming up that I will, you know what, here, let's focus on this one real quick. It brought up the need for, if you have a button that does multiple actions and they're not like reliable every time you press the button, like sometimes all 4 things happen and then sometimes only 3 happen, that's a lack of delay issue. It's going so fast it can't get it all done accurately. And so that's where you need to insert delays. The first item, the first action, I hardly ever put a delay there because I want to make sure my screen's keeping up with it. So, okay, that's there. And because that's the first one, I mean, there's nothing, ahead of it, so forth. So I don't usually put one there. And so this one actually was unmute. We're going to put that back to unmute. So it quickly unmutes and or quickly sends them a request to unmute. Then it adds the spotlight. That I would usually put, 50 to maybe more, but I'll go with 50 right now. A 50 millisecond delay. So that is this item with no delay gets executed, unmute. 50 seconds of delay, then spotlights. Let's say 50 seconds of delay, 50 milliseconds of delay, then sets the gallery view back on my ISO machine. And so the buttons stay up to date. Now, I think this is correct in the sense that when you execute the actions of a button, they all have the same starting point. So they all start, the 2 with a delay at the same time are delayed by 50 milliseconds, not one after the other, like I read it. They delay independently 50 milliseconds and then they try to shoot. Well, they may try to shoot together, unmute and spotlight all at the same time, because they are not a top to bottom processing. And if you want that, and I have personally have more success with top to bottom processing by check marking the relative delays option. And so that is do this, delay, then do that, delay, then do that. And it does it relatively from top to bottom the way that it's written. And so it's not an absolute have to, just something that if you're aware of it, it's a tool that you can test and see where you gain your best success. Any other thoughts on that, Justin, David, Ray, Damra?
That's exactly the way it works. If you didn't have relative delays on, you'd make your second 50 100, so that it was 100 milliseconds from the time you press the button, which would be 50 seconds after that second action.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, sir. All right. So a little while ago, my multi-spotlighting wasn't being dependable when Justin first brought it up. And so if I can get, 2 or 3 of you to raise your hand, I will select you. I'll do 3 of you and tell it to go on stage, which is that process. And so I was already spotlit. So it added 3 reliably. And let me check my off stage here. Relative is on. These are actually set at hundreds, so I'll just leave it at that for now. So I'll go off stage, and reliably you are off. I'm going to do Justin and David without hands up. I'll just pick you. go on stage, test, off stage, test. I'm going to select Justin, David, Robert, and Ray, 4 of you. But before I click on stage, I'm going to click clear all spots and then go on stage. It actually cleared my selections. Justin, David, Robert, Ray on stage. So I've got, all 4. So with the, 50 millisecond delay relative on those list of actions, looks like I've got the dependability now of doing that. Gosh, I didn't show you that. I'm a horrible presenter. I didn't used to think that, but I kind of think it now. All right, see, because I didn't show you visually what I was doing while I was doing it. All right, so I'm going to go off stage. So here we go. So let's do the whole thing. Let's get 4 of you to raise a hand. Justin, David, Robert, and Ray, if that'll work. So everybody out there on YouTube land can see those 4 on the Stream Deck, and also in the gallery, just to show up YouTube as well. So the gallery is showing 4 hands, and the Stream Deck is respectively showing the 4 hands. I'm in multi-select mode right now, so I'm going to select all 4. And because just because your hands are up and just because my multi-select is enabled doesn't mean I have to select anything more than 1 or 2 or number 1 and number 4. You still have all the flexibility to make that happen. But I've selected all 4 of you, and then I click the on stage. But if I were a little while ago, I was spotlit. If you're in the middle of a show and you go, hey, I gotta kill those spotlights, and then throw these 4 up, then I've got a button that says clear all spots. I'll select, and then I'll go on stage, and now I'll know I have a clean screen doing it. Now, if you're building, in the past, I had this show. I don't remember what it's all about, but I decided to build what I would call scenes instead, and the scenes were, the button it's a wipe and reset, kind of a wipe and reset, and versus there was never anything that was additive, never anything that was selectively, removed. It was just a wipe and reset. So my button was scene 1. I named them scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. But I had to start with, what's the first action was kind of clear everything out, and then immediately follow it with spotlight, 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 unmute, 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 and so forth, get all the actions in afterwards. And then tear that down at the beginning of the next scene, and then rebuild it again. And so there's so much flexibility on, kind of whether it's run of show or whatnot, whatever the workflow is going to, require, I can promise you it can be done and accomplished. Sometimes in just 1 button, but sometimes you want, a lot of flexibility. ZoomOSC first release is very different than the version 2. Not version 2, but today's version. The whole workflow thought, of select and then have this panel of buttons of what to do, whether it's muting, videos, spotlighting, whatever, raising hands, lowering hands, and so forth. That concept, really didn't exist. And although the lookup library, I don't know if it's leftover stuff right now or not, but there seems like there's more than what needs to be there, because there's these few select library items that, are user basics that then just have a drop down of all the different things you can do for a user, or all the things you can do system wide, and so it really simplifies the number of action items that you have to become familiar with to a great degree, because they're not all individual. One has this whole list of them, and so it makes it a lot easier, I think, to work with, for sure. All right. Okay. So all hands are down right now. Robert's bouncing. Okay. No questions, burning comments, things like that.
So I got a burning comment for you. So I think one key thing, critical thing you actually haven't covered is inside of ZoomOSC, you have to set, forget the exact field, but you have to set the one that says target ID, Zoom ID, or username to Zoom ID in order for that gallery view to update real time. Yeah, I set it to username the first time I tried it out, and it was taking minutes to update my gallery view.
Yeah, you end up having to bounce.
Yeah, and that's actually in the
things,
Zoom.
But
yeah, that's actually in the ZoomOSC client itself that you have to set that.
The client itself. I couldn't remember if it was behind the module or not, but you're right. So if I brought this up, then so under the OSC settings, because this is the ISO client, which supports OSC as well, if you're licensed for it, is in the either target ID or Zoom ID for the gallery tracking. Is that the field you're talking about?
Yep, that would be the field. I believe as well, you possibly might need to do the subscribe to. I can never keep straight with the subscribe to. It does different than the gallery tracking mode.
Yeah, I just always ask for all. And I don't think I'm ever shortchanged unless it's a huge meeting. I did have a really large meeting that I narrowed this down to. I knew I was just using, a target list, but it seems to fly well.
I will say the one downside right now to the state that ZoomOSC and Companion's in is they consider it beta software still. So the documentation is very much lagging. And they've said once it comes out of beta, they'll update all the docs, but there's several cases I've run into where I've asked questions in Discord and other places of Andy. And he's like, oh yeah, that changed. Here's the setting that you actually need to have now. So I'm looking forward to them getting out of beta so they can update all their documentation again.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the tough part of I think Midjourney just had the same kind of reply, and I don't know if they're in beta or not, but their things are changing so rapidly, it makes little sense for them to burn something into a document that literally changes, day by day, week by week, and so forth. And development teams have been rapidly developing for some years now, and so I think that's what's driven some of the popularity of community. They let the community do a lot of the support because of that. So it, and if done right, it works really, really well. And if it's a good product, it works really, really well. And, advocates such as David, who, is a big eCam advocate, right? And, out there doing work for eCam, I don't think for pay, but he's still always advocating. Yeah, exactly. Right. Who asked us questions about eCam earlier? And David was not at his desk.
Yeah, sorry. I couldn't actually find the question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall who it was and if he's still here or not. But if you are, just chime in. Robert, you have your hand up, bud. Now you must be double muted because Zoom is unmuted in Spotlight.
I was double muted.
There you go.
I think it would be useful for people who are using Companion for the first time if you just talked about how you organize all of your buttons on different pages. Because from what I've found, and it took me a long time to understand this, is that I would go in to prepare for an event, go and edit a button, and then the following event, I'd want to go back to the settings and I had to go back and edit again. So I eventually made copies of all of my buttons at the end from pages, say 80 onwards. And then whenever I had a session, I would just drag and drop copy the buttons that I needed. So I think it would be useful if you could just talk about that. And Jeff, the export button and the copy button, how to copy and how to export images.
Thanks for that. That it makes a ton of sense because it been there, done that. Still, practice better now than I did before because it always usually takes a big stick of pain to go through, and I lost a ton of work, and so I do better now. But yeah, the as far as button layout, I don't. All I can do is share how I totally rough things out, and then when I've kind of got everything what I feel together, then it gets cleaned up. Like I was copying and moving buttons probably 30 minutes prior to the Zoom test kitchen today because I wanted to combine the hand raised example to my camera management as well in vMix. And so, if I were to share here, my top row, and I try to color code to a degree, is my, pre-show. So I start the Zoom meeting and I hit pre-show. It runs the pre-roll, which I finally updated, by the way, today. It doesn't show the Andy and who was with them. Oh, Andy and Sam, post Zoomtopia. So I finally got that updated today. But anyways, runs the pre-roll. And then, 5 minutes, to the top of the hour, I hit start stream and it tells vMix to start streaming. Go live is, kills all that, doesn't kill the stream, and cuts to my camera, turns my mic on, turns the music off and all that just post show. It's kind of same back, and then finally fade to black at the end. All my cameras. So in vMix, anything that is in preview is a green bar above it, and anything that's in program out or on air is a red bar. So I deal with green to red when going live. So I mimic that in my Stream Deck. So if they are inputs, whether they're real cameras or screen captures, makes no difference. If they're inputs that can go out for video, they're green unless they're on air. So all these green ones are inputs. They're not in preview because there are certain shows that I'll create, duplicate rows, and I'll put it in preview and then cut to it or fade to it or merge or whatnot. I'll go to preview and transition a separate button. In the kitchen itself, I just do direct cuts to the cameras. They go directly to program out. They don't get sent to preview. And so they're green unless they're live. So I can always at a glance know that, this is the live camera shot right now. And then all the ZoomOSC stuff, most of the ZoomOSC stuff, especially the selections and so forth, are this kind of pale yellow to then the on-stage, off-stage options. And the on-stage, off-stage, if I go back to Companion, I've done that in two buttons. There's so many things like that make me think back on Name That Tune way back in the day. If you're old enough, Name That Tune was a game show. I can name that tune. They give a clue, and I can name that tune in like 4 notes. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person already knows, or 1 note, or they already know the answer. They don't even need the note or notes. But anyways, those 2 buttons. A pop quiz. How can I combine on stage, off stage to a single button and still have all the functionality that I've got between the 2 within a single button? That's not rhetorical.
You would use it as a latch button.
You need 2 instances, don't you?
No, I don't need any more instances. Yeah, so so there's actions, right? There's actions associated with both. So the on stage press action does the unmute, spotlight, and gallery view, and then the off stage, kind of reverses all that and does its thing. The main thing to reflect back on is that you have things that happen, actions that occur when you press a button, and actions that occur when you release a button. Or if you put it in latch mode, things that happen when you press and release the button the first time. That's like no latches, press and hold, latches, press and release, but it's still the same set of actions that execute, right? And so you'd put it in latch mode and put the on stage, let's say, for instance, the on stage actions in it, and then put the actions that are currently in the off stage, paste the, not just, I don't want to make it sound as simple as copy and paste because that kind of doesn't exist inside a companion. But take those actions that are currently in off stage, but as a standalone button, and put it in the unlatch or the release. So if I knew I wanted to put, people on stage just the way it's written right now, but with one button, I can press and hold the button while they're on stage. Hold until they're finished. And then I can let go of the button and it'll unspotlight, mute everybody, lower their hands, be done. If I don't want to have to hold the button while they're on stage, I turn on latch mode. That's it. And so now I can press and release and it holds the button for me. And then I can press and release and it will undo everything that we've got that. And that can all be done under one button. The feedback section is what you want to focus on when you do that, that when I press this button, what do I want the button to look like or say? And that is, do I want to add a graphic? Do I want to change the colors so that I know visually that it's pressed or latched? And you may change the text on it and it says on stage, and then you press it again, it says off stage or whatnot. So it can be the status or it can be the name of the action that's going to take place when you press it. Just depends on how your mind works. But, to me, the color would be more of a green while they're on stage and a red while they're off stage, right? It's kind of a go or a stop. But those are all just flexible options for you. So to Robert's point, how do you back up your work on Companion? Anytime, every time you're on the page, I'm going to go off camera there so I don't cover stuff up. You always have this import export. And so if I wanted to, like if you guys said, hey, Jeff, can you send me this page? I can export and make it available to you. But if I wanted to export just this page, that's this button, export page, and it's instant. And so it exported that page, and it's in my downloads folder now as an actual file. There, right there. So so that's the file, and that I can, and I'm happy to do it. I mean, if somebody wants this, I can just put it in the chat here as well. But that's how you can export and share a page of your work to help somebody get started or whatnot. If you want to make a backup of any and all pages, I should say all pages in your Stream Deck, that's this import export tab. And if you click export there, it's instantaneous as well, but it contains all your work on all 99 pages potentially that you have code on. So that's the whole thing. Now, even if I were to export and share my entire companion file, when you import it, so it's here in my downloads. If I were to, I'll go to a page here, an empty page, and I'll say import. I'll go to my downloads folder and sort it by date, knowing that this was the most recent. This is just a page. That was the first one I did, but this is all my pages. And so I'm going to say import that, and it'll bring up the first page, and it will have all the other pages here as well. And so I go, hey, let's say I want to import page 4 here, and you can replace, if you replace your current config, that'll wipe your current config, like anything you've done. And if you do replace current config with the file I sent you, don't call me, because it's going to write over all 99 pages of blanks and code, but it's all going to be from my companion, and yours is going to be bye-bye. Now, if you have an exported backup of your own, that's not the end of the world. Might be a pain in the rear, but it's not the end of the world. So, but you can replace the whole thing, or you can get to the page that you want. So I say, I want page 4. I'm on my blank page 95. Import individual page, and it knows what that page's requirements are because it reads the code there, and it says, hey, there's some dependencies of these modules. Now, mine looks really friendly because it came from my system and I've got all those modules. But if you don't have a module that somebody has sent you, it'll let you create a new instance of it, and or if you do have the module, you can point it to your own module and not have to duplicate it as well. So it says down here, do I want to import this to page 95? Makes that assumption because that's where I am. I can change that. Let's say, no, I want that to be on 97. It'll keep up with your change as well. So page 97. So if I click import, it just sucks it right in. And so this is a way, I would imagine this is what Robert did when he said he started making kind of backup copies, pages basically in the same config that were, copies of other invested pages. You can just do an export of the whole thing and then import, and then selectively take this page, import this page here and this page there and this page there. And he just has a backup. So now when he's out there on his kind of production pages and he ends up making a tweak, he has something to go back to, right? Without having to go find a file or whatnot. It's just kind of built into his config. Does that help? Did I miss anything there, Robert?
No, that was absolutely correct. Okay. And that's the way I do it. And for an event, I'll have like either copy a page as a template, or I'll start from a clean page, and just knowing what buttons I have already defined, copy the buttons into the sequence of what the event is going to require.
Yeah. This isn't all ZoomOSC, and there's a little bit of vmix. I thought I saw, lower third vmix, fade vmix. There's a little bit of stuff, but mostly, I will, let me export page 4. I will.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
So let's say you're going to your client's location and they're supplying all the equipment, and you export this onto a USB stick, and you go and plug it into their computer. What about the dependent files? Like you made the hand symbol in Photoshop, right? And that's on your computer in a specific directory in a folder. Does that PNG or whatever it is with alpha have to be bundled in, or when you export, when you do the export from companion for a backup, does it bundle all the necessary files with it, or do you have to, like relative
Yeah.
web pages versus
Yeah.
absolute addresses on web pages?
Yeah, it's a great point to bring up, and I'm going to put my best guess on it because I don't know it for fact, but I'm pretty confident if I opened up an export file that I would find a file path to the PNG file. I don't know for sure if it's a absolute path or a relative path, but either way, I would imagine it's relative because Companion lives on and runs on multiple platforms.
I'm just wondering if it's bundling the associated required files in the export. Okay.
No, it doesn't. It's just a single file that's all about. It's basically an XML file that is all text based.
So if I took my USB stick to the other location and they don't have those files in those directories, it's not going to function the way I expect it to.
Yeah, it would be building a workflow, in your world, my world, that says, I put all my assets for companion referenced assets in this folder, and when I export, I'm going to put it in this folder. Now I'd have to go test it out and go, how do I solve that relative path issue? Kind of like no matter where it ends up, are the assets always one subfolder down, no matter what drive or reference point that it's on, mount point that it's on, it will always work. But that would be that I don't believe Companion's not going to help a ton with that. That would be setting up assets one subfolder down locally, and then when you put it on your thumb drive, putting it in, putting the export in the folder, knowing that the subfolder has the assets would be my guess, or just wrap them all into one. I mean, the export's just one file. It never kind of busts it out. It's just one file, and have all the assets, everything in one folder, and it would carry. But the export itself won't contain like PNGs and so forth. Yeah, you'd have to go that extra step.
I think it actually does, Jeff, include all those
Do you?
PNGs. Because I've bought profiles from people and I didn't have to worry about images in certain directories. I just had to import the config and all the images were on my buttons.
Let me...
There is also a caveat to the export option. We haven't talked about triggers, which is a fairly advanced feature. But if you get into
fairly fresh,
if you get into triggers in Companion, those are actually not included in the export.
Really?
Yes, that is a top request for people with the export button, is to put those in, because the people that use it have spent a ton of time doing all this automation with triggers. Things like when countdown hits 0 or this variable hits 0, take some automated action like change my OBS scenes, change my vMix scenes. People want those backed up, and they unfortunately are not in the export.
I think you're right. I can see right here. See if I blow this up.
Yep, they converted the image into a base 64.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I was scrolling through, most everything's readable, and I was looking for something that was highly not readable, which, we hit right here. So it's, here's a ping. And it does look like it actually stores that internally. So that's cool to know. That's really cool to know. Well, there you go, Frank.
I'm just trying, I haven't really spent a lot of time with Companion. So I'm trying to understand, conceptually, it makes a lot of sense, what you're talking about. I understand it, but I've never gone to the trouble of building the buttons. And, then if you put all that effort in and you want to take it to a different job site, what happens? So I'm just trying to wrap my head around the fundamentals before I deal with the logic of building the buttons and their actions, right?
Yeah, looks, with knowing that it embeds that, it looks like looks like a good package, and got some good portability there. So, and that's the thing, you can be anywhere, and even if they don't have Companion, I mean, Google BitFocus Companion, go to their site, go to Companion, download their release version, their stable version, and import import your export file. And like I said, if it doesn't have the modules, which it won't, it just says new, and it will pull them in for you and create new instances to those modules. So it's pretty quick.
Hey, Jeff, can I also make a few comments on Robert's question around buttons? So one of the things you mentioned, Robert, is you were doing a whole bunch of copying of buttons. If you've got your buttons set up, there's actually an internal command in Companion that you can call those buttons. So from another button, you can call other buttons, so you don't have to constantly copy buttons over and over if they're just going to do the same exact action. So it's a nice way to be able to actually set up, like, especially with like my ZoomOSC, I set up all of my action commands like spotlight, unspotlight, then on my gallery page, my group page, they all call the one action button to do it. So anytime I need to make a change, I just change the one button. And they also have to also make that even cooler. One of the feedback options is to set the style to another button. So that'll bring in the text that I have on the button, all those feedbacks for colors and everything will happen in the other buttons where I've told it to call it. So it really took me from copying buttons over and over.
I gotta chase that one down, because one of my big enemies is like having to click background colors, foreground colors on all the different buttons, because I was unaware of that. So being able to reference like a style sheet in HTML and so forth would be when it's not even slick.
It's not even the style sheet. It's just a feedback that literally says
the
internal button style, and you just pick the page and the button number are on that page, and magically you get all the styles, the text. So pretty cool things.
Yeah, and buttons can change page numbers, so you can have, jump to pages and so forth. And they also have some of those new in the last year or so, the toggle shift. So you can assign a button as a toggle button, and when you, without moving pages, and without it even having to exist on another page, so it doesn't consume any more space, you can toggle, and all or some of your buttons change to a different setting. And so you could have, let's say your page gets full of camera selections. So you select this camera and you hit toggle, and when you hit toggle, then you have your choices of outputs or whatnot, and so you don't ever have to change a page and so forth. And where we used to have to do that, we used to have a button that would say jump to, this page, and then you'd get to that next page and you do your thing. But now you can, program that in as a toggle instead. And it's pretty slick. It's not, I don't think it's very well documented last time I looked on how to, use it effectively, but I don't think it's very super intuitive. But I think once you start using it, it does some pretty cool stuff. Yeah, Robert.
Justin, thank you. That you have saved a lot of hours of my life. I never realized that you could copy formats from other buttons. That is such a useful piece of information. You've made my day. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That is like a killer function. It's going to save so many hours of frustration, really, because having to do all of that, like you said, Jeff, repetitive work is so.
Well, I can see it. I don't see myself ever burning 99 pages of this Stream Deck or Companion, right? So I can see myself dedicating a page simply for button styles. I never go to that page, but I reference that button for that style, that button for that, and just having a button style. There's a style sheet for you. It's page 91, and there's multiple buttons with different styles on there that are now referenceable. So I think I'm gonna go spend some time on that. Yeah, that was good.
You'd be surprised how many pages you can have. I think I'm up to 85 right now. But it does things
that's only because you refuse to create additional files, because dump them off to files, right?
Oh yeah, you can totally dump them.
Yeah, but no, I totally get you. A copy and paste. I wish in the actions area, copy and paste existed. I don't know. I am unaware that it is. I do know that on the buttons themselves, like you can't drag and move a button like you can in the Stream Deck app, which I really wish you'd be able to do. But you can now at least select a button with your mouse and Control C, Control V to paste it into, the next 3, blank areas. And I don't think that used to exist, but but it was a whole lot of clicking, which you can still do the whole lot of clicking method as well, but Control C and V help a lot. But I really wish Control C and V. And the other thing is you can reorder actions within the press section or within the release section, but you can't drag that action from the press section down to the release section. It's like, come on. Sometimes you need to separate those things out or whatnot. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, they're either, whether it's a time thing or coding challenge, or there's something, just barriers that are in the way that, aren't super obvious to me of why kind of basic, user experience isn't there, but it's not. But it's a super powerful device, and it's not a device, it's software. Stream Deck is, like I said, it's a physical option, whether you want it or not. And I like it, but I'll tell you, these buttons, they feel good, but they're not quiet. If you got a hot mic close enough by, these buttons are not super quiet. And so it's one of those things. Somebody posted on Discord the other day that they really liked the new buttons, and I don't know what that translates to, whether it meant they're really quiet, they're smooth and quiet, or I don't know, but hopefully they're quieter. But anyways, Jason, what you got?
Yeah, regarding those buttons and the Stream Deck, have you ever tried to use an iPad or any type of tablet as the control surface so you're not dealing with clicky buttons?
I have, yeah.
How do you like
matter
that?
of fact, I don't mind it, with the exception of I don't know that I've had the problem during a show, but sometimes all you have to do is get near that touch screen on a iPhone, iPad, and it all of a sudden it's activated.
Yeah.
And
Especially if you have hot hands.
yeah. And so, but they're bigger buttons. So let me do this real quick. So if I go back to the back and go, so, let's say we wanted to do this, or if one of you guys were VPN'd into my office here, then you could, I could tell you that, because over here there's what's called emulator, web buttons, mobile buttons, or the new web mobile buttons. So this is what the emulator looks like. And it by far is the closest to looking like a physical Stream Deck. And with that, when you have a mouse, you can you can just literally just click on that and it switches accordingly. This is the web buttons look, and there's pluses and minuses. I mean, same thing as far as clicking it and having it function and so forth. But here you can just scroll down. And so if you have multiple pages, which, they can be changed with the intended, button presses on the physical device. But here you just scroll, and one of these, it's not this one.
And you can use the zoom, the plus minus that's in the web browser, I guess, to
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You can fill the screen and do that. There's here this the web emulator has some settings, and so you can tell it what size Stream Deck to emulate. You can tell it to limit it to certain pages. So if you have, page 1, 10, and 20, you can define that without having to be bothered scrolling past the other ones and so forth. So it can use that accordingly. There are jump to buttons because, you can use the jump to buttons if everything works. And this one, the web stays stays set and is not hard to chase. And or you use their built-in up, down. And then they have one last one, which is new web and mobile. And this one looks pretty real without it having kind of that photorealistic emulator attempt. The buttons look very real in the sense of companion buttons. And so you can go full screen on this. You can set settings on this as well. This is probably the freshest it's by far, but
so other than the hot hands being too close to the touch surface and accidentally triggering a button, what are the downsides? Does it respond slower since it's not a hardware device?
No, I don't think it responds slower. So let's say we wanted to do the emulator, and here's the address, right? There's the actual. Come on, fingers. Oh, it's not going to blow that.
Yeah, I see it.
So anyways, it's there. So I'm going to fire up my iPad.
Jason, while Jeff is doing that, if I can just give you some feedback from my perspective, I don't like the touchpad solution. One, because of holding your finger on the button, counting down 3, 2, 1, and you got it too close. But the other one is it requires Wi-Fi. So if you're taking it out of the office and you're on site, then things start getting somewhat unpredictable in ways. I just don't feel
even if you map to the same network that you're building all your IP cameras and all. Like if you're on site, you're doing a show on site, you've got your IP cameras, you got your Cat6 cable running around, you've set up your own network, you put your iPad on that network, you still have some latency issues?
I wouldn't call. I haven't done it that way. We usually have our cables running around, but I've never set up an additional access point just for the notebook, just to have, or the iPad, just to have access to companion on it.
Okay.
Jason, the only thoughts I can add to that would be, don't forget too, because if you are on the iPad, it's got to contact the companion server, right? Because companion really is a server, right? It's just sitting there waiting for something to talk to it, right?
Yeah, right.
So if it's a physical, so where the Stream Deck is USB'd to that physical, as long as the companion server is running on that local machine that the Stream Deck, the physical Stream Deck is connected to, of course, there's a direct connection to it, right? So latency for the Stream Deck to actually send the command on the network, which is still going to do, right, is now your latency between the companion server and that physical unit that you're talking to. Now, if you add to that Wi-Fi iPad going to companion desktop, let's say, now now the Wi-Fi on the iPad will add a little latency to go into the companion server, and then the companion server will add the latency to go to the IP unit that it's talking to.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. So there's the networking latency, that you'll be adding. Is it a lot? Is it milliseconds? It is milliseconds. But
yeah, I would say.
But is milliseconds important or not important? Comes
to a point.
question.
Once you start getting above 50 or 60 milliseconds, then you might notice it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where Robert was saying, Wi-Fi is dangerous always, depending on the venue you're going to too.
Well, yeah.
Because that in itself is, I had more hair before Wi-Fi. I'm just kidding.
We
But,
have the issue in Orlando here where I'll come in and I'll set up my own network, and there's the back of the house with all the equipment, the ugly zone, and then you want to remote out the control to just have your person, your producer or whoever out there in the house occupying one seat with an iPad and firing off stuff as they need to. But one of the issues that we have around here is a lot of the convention sites will set up a wireless jammer. And so if I'm not running hard cable, they're trying to block me out.
iOS supports Ethernet to Lightning and Ethernet to USB-C dongles.
I've got a hub connected to my iPad's Type-C connection, and I can plug in a network cable to that hub, and it'll use it in a heartbeat. And but the other thing is like if I on this iPad launched speed test, and I'm not hardwired on the iPad, everything else is, but if I run a speed test on this Wi-Fi on iPad, it ain't bad, I mean, and the other thing is there's a big difference between Wi-Fi being the devil when it comes to trying to stream video reliably versus send data packets, which it was built for. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't built to stream video, and I think that's the big challenge. I'm not a huge proponent of Wi-Fi if you have a choice, get plugged in and so forth, but to
fire off string commands, it should be relatively lean and mean.
Yeah, I mean they are. They're Andy, Carlucci has proven that from great distances, send text-based ZoomOSC commands and have some remote capabilities that blow us all away, right? So here's the when you bring up an emulator on Companion, it brings it up in a browser, right? And you copy the URL and plug it into any device, and away you go. So that's all I've done here is I typed in the URL with the port number that Companion's on, and here it's 8888/emulator, and the 4 different types of emulators they have they all just have a slightly unique extended name. This one is emulator. So with that, but if I were to switch my camera, if I go to my main cam V8, so I'll say I'll do countdowns and change. I go 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, and I'm hitting the button with my finger on 1. So 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. I mean,
It's really fast.
Not that we're the scientific analysis, but it's pretty fast, and pretty darn responsive. So it's not my favorite device. It's not my number one. Probably will never become, the iPad will never become the number one device to manage. But as far as, being able to and having the flexibility to, and especially when it comes to like the emulators, I don't think the emulator is the best option because the only time I've been driven to is called Tablet 3. So
Jeff, I would say in the scenario for the iPad, the emulator is the option to use. It's the only one of their emulators that if you have buttons that go to other pages, it actually goes to the page.
Yeah.
The rest of them just laugh at you.
My drive up to this point, it's like, why would I use an iPad? And I have a couple of different times. This Tablet 3 is because of multi-page, and so you say the emulator will jump to. Well, I have this preference to this new one. Oh, I thought the new one scrolled also. The new one doesn't scroll. Let me see if it's an option. Yeah, it's not. So the previous emulators, so the newest, that just scrolled. It doesn't scroll if you're on a button. You have to be in the gray area. Interesting. Okay. So anyways, the ability to scroll multi-pages, your point being, Justin, is that the emulator, not the web type emulators, but the real emulator is the best because it dependably jumps pages when you have programmed buttons to move you to designated pages, which makes great sense. So, it just gives a lot of flexibility, I think of churches and volunteers, and, it's a device that like everybody likes to, get their hands on and so forth. So it's not an intimidating device and so forth. So
yeah, there's just been spaces where we purposely have to remote out the control surface, to run an extra cable. It's not going to work, or it's going to be a trip hazard, or the client thinks it's ugly or whatever. And so we put one person out in the audience and with a tablet, and the client doesn't know whether they're production or an audience member. They look like everyone else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like soundboards these days, right? Mixers. You're encouraged to walk the house and mix and so forth. And same thing. You could, maybe it's just iMag, but you could switch the iMag all night long, walking around the house on a wireless iPad. And I don't know. It just depends. When it's, the higher the critical, the higher the cost, the more demanding the customer is, the more we go, there ain't no freaking way I'm doing it on a device without a wire connected. I mean, just that whole level of stress just in demand rises for sure. So,
Is my point with the Wi-Fi really wasn't so much that the Wi-Fi doesn't work in the office and the studio. I don't have an issue. The problem is in hotels, where you have conference rooms in hotels, and then you've got behind the wall where you're sitting, there is a kitchen warming up area, and they have microwaves. And when those things come on, you get all sorts of things happening that you didn't expect to happen. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Those are my biggest concerns.
In ballrooms and conference rooms and so forth, you can often jump on a Wi-Fi and it'll be a non-routable separate subnet than your wired equipment. And so at that point, it doesn't even become an option. If what you're looking to access is out there on the web, you're fine. But if you're trying to, like me, I'm trying to, manage my companion server. I just recently did this like last week or earlier this week. I have Google Fiber plugged in here to the house for the last, 3 years or so. It's been the best internet I've ever had. Stable, clean, the whole bit. But I had this double NAT issue trying to, receive successfully a SRT, incoming SRT stream, because I have a double NAT. I had Google's original router in place with maybe 4 ports, but then I also had a Google Nest. I killed their original Wi-Fi and put my Google Nest plus the other pucks around my house for the Wi-Fi. But it's a router itself. And so I idealized that, well, if I'm going to keep them both, I need Google's original router to become a bridge, right? And so I have access to, the interface and so forth, but I saw nothing. And so I called them just the other day and asked them, he said, no, your model number, in fact, does not support bridge mode. And he says, but you can just take it out, just remove it, and you put in your own router. I said, well, the Google Puck is a router. And so now from my fiber jack on my wall is plugged directly into my one of 4 Google Pucks, and it's my primary router. And whether you're on Wi-Fi in the house or hardwired, because it's not my own router. If it was my own router, I could, get one that I could manage routing tables and so forth. But without that, everybody gets the same subnet address, and the equipment in my office I have reservations for, so they're consistent, but everything else is just dynamic. And so I just got to a point where I can communicate with everything. I used to have separation, which there can be good things about separation as well, don't get me wrong. But in my case, it was more of a challenge than not. So yeah, always things to consider, and understanding. I'm lucky to have a background in networking and subnetting and so forth. So my SRT works now and the whole bit. Anyways, well, good stuff. Helpful, interesting. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so I want to just tag one more thing for Jason. If you wanted a physical device out in the audience, you can actually use something called companion satellite. And that'll actually take, which I'm actually using on my desk. My Stream Deck on my desk is actually connected across the room to my actual companion machine. And it acts like it's connected to companion, gives me all the same buttons, all the same options. So that could be another option you have if you didn't want the Wi-Fi without the touch feel, kind of a setup.
How does the satellite connect to the server?
You give it an IP address and the port number of your companion server, and it somehow magically brings in all the buttons that you've configured on companion.
Okay. So like some sort of peer-to-peer arrangement.
Some sort of peer-to-peer, and then if you actually go to your Surfaces tab in companion,
TCP socket that gets opened that sends. It's interestingly implemented. It sends the key up and key downs for the presses, and then sends the whole picture from companion to your button. One of the issues we did find is over remote connections, sometimes it's a little unstable, and they don't allow for host names yet, only IP addresses.
Oh, really? They won't resolve, huh? I just put in the chat the direct link to their companion satellite. I had not heard of it, so they have looks like a short explanation, some docs help, and a short video on it as well.
There honestly is not much to it. You literally install it. It launches. It's like ask what's your host, what's your port number, and off it connects. And that's pretty much all I did when I actually ran it. And if I look in companion, it sees my Stream Decks that are connected through satellite as just another surface. So it looks like it's a Stream Deck connected directly to companion. It works well as long as you have a stable connection.
And Jason, also the satellite actually works for any flavor of OS as well, just like companion.
Okay, well that's good. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, you can put it on a Pi. Like one of the common use cases is add a PoE board to a Pi, and then there's a 3D printed case for the Stream Deck XL. And basically what you can do then is like you create your own PoE powered and connected Stream Deck XL that just ties back to your companion with one cable.
Yeah, I like that for sure.
Jonas, does companion satellite support full functionality, or is it only like pressing buttons? Can you edit and create buttons with satellite as well?
So you would still need to use the web interface for that.
And log into the machine, so to say, the IP of the machine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like you use something like Cloudflare tunnels, what we use to remotely control all the companions. I have customers all across the world that I set companion up for, and then their teams remotely control it through the Cloudflare tunnel. Yeah, that all works.
Do you know if companion satellite counts as an instance for ATEMs?
No, so
or is it only the
satellite
server?
is it's just like remotely connecting a Stream Deck to companion. It's not doing anything else.
Okay. Thanks.
They had one of the reasons it exists is with remote USB. We found one of the issues is Stream Deck really is just like a full HD displays with some buttons. And depending on how the service implemented the updating of the display, that's a lot of bandwidth to send like into the software, then over to the internet and back. So that's one of the use cases because it's just slimmer in bandwidth needs.
And Andre, just to answer the question, I think you're asking is that as long as the ATEM and whatever gear is already local, like Jonas is set up at many different locations. So if the companion is local, the ATEM is local, the PTZs are local, or whatever other gear that you have is local to the companion within that physical facility, then you can, via satellite, whatever you've set up in companion itself can be controlled through satellite.
Copy that. And if I log in on the machine where I have the satellite, if I log into the companion server, that also doesn't count as a connection to the ATEM because it's only logging into the server, right?
Exactly.
Okay, great.
Companion should only open one connection to the ATEM. I don't know if they have to do some workarounds because the SDK is quite horrible. So it might count as 1.5 or 2. Because who really?
Yes.
It's a little more complicated. If you ever need a backup to the ATEM SDK crashing, you can, at least for the newer models, also just use the Video Hub protocol. I've cut full shows just by using the Video Hub protocol on Companion because that works with the Constellation HDs and ATEM Mini and ATEM SDIs. So you can just do cuts, no fades and everything fancy. But if that's what you need to do to survive the show, yeah, it's a good backup to have.
Is this a separate instance in Companion?
Yes, the Video Hub. It's their router.
Oh. Okay, and if I connect it to the IP of the 2ME, I can switch inputs.
Yep.
Wow, cool. Thank you.
Good stuff. Learning plenty.
Jeff, you mentioned something about the new Stream Decks being quieter. Well, I got a Christmas present.
Nice.
And the buttons themselves are slightly larger, but they're no quieter than
the comment I was making was the comment I read didn't say quiet. It just said it really like the new buttons. And I'm like, gosh, I don't know if that means quiet or what, but so it's good to hear that they're not. I mean, I'd be disappointed if I ordered.
Quieter, and of course the push buttons on these dial knobs are really noisy. I mean,
I can hear them click already. Wow.
So I don't use this for production stuff, but I do use it for film editing, and that's where it's really nice because you can get these buttons, the knobs here to move forward, upwards, downwards, do whatever you want, and click from frames to frames, and the slide over here is really good if you want to do something that is associated with moving forward to pretty quickly. It becomes like a swipe.
So is that a display and a slide?
Correct. This is a display and a slide over here. And then you've got the 4 buttons which turn left, right. You can define them separately and click.
Press. Huh. Very cool.
And you can also define the slide to change in the buttons at the top based on the click, of course.
That's what I was thinking. Like it can be a display which is describing the buttons or status of the buttons, but yet the slide doesn't have to have anything to do with the buttons. It can be a function of its own. Yeah, cool.
You can also tap the display. So each of the displays, it's called a section, has a tab as well. It's interesting. Skalhoy implemented it as another slide because they can get the position of your finger on that button. So you really have 4 different things you can do. You can press the touch, you can push down the encoder, you can turn the encoder to right and to left. In theory, there's also a different event for when the encoder is pressed down while turned. Like some devs and I have developed it, that if you push it down, it goes into fine mode. And then it's more the adjustments.
Very cool. Very cool.
Is there any updates if that one is implemented in Companion? Jonas, do you know?
It's implemented right now.
It's kind of, I mean, if we take a look here, you can, I know nothing about it, but I mean, they do have the enable rotary actions checkbox.
That you get the left and the right pulses. I don't know. The Stream Deck SDK debounces it. I'm not sure if Companion debounces it. And one of the actions is there's no way to be like, this is a fader from 0 to 100, update vmix values on that. It's always just incremental. It's not the best support right now.
Right. Yeah, I know. In the Slack channel, I know they were talking a lot about it. I know there was negativity towards the unit initially in the Slack channel, but I didn't know if they actually went. I haven't checked in the last few weeks to see if it was in the latest betas or anything.
Oh, I think it's going to be an interesting problem because like this really is like Elgato designed this to be clicked, and so one of the reasoning when talking to the developers is every time you turn it and you feel a click, that's when the software also gets a click, because otherwise you have like all the software deciding differently. Oh yeah, actually, if you only move it like by 10 millimeters, we don't do anything, but you touch the encoder, so you expect the software to do something. That was a design choice by Elgato to make it clicked, but that also, like for a lot of people, doesn't work for an encoder anymore. So I think there's just a lot of cultural debate within Companion right now how to implement it.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of cultural debate. I love that, Jonas. When I was talking to Tim at vMix too about it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really cool as soon as, I mean, the SDK is released-ish for it now. And it's really great how it all works. We should see some plugins implemented soon. But yeah, it's great. They have really put a lot of thought into it, and it might like open up for even crazier devices with just knobs and stuff, because you see in the code now, it's way more flexible. The little display that you have on top of the knob, you can customize that. You have like a box with like a progress bar, and you can position it where you want and all that. So they really integrated as well now.
And of course, it automatically what do you call it? Pulls up the Elgato, in Windows at least, the Elgato sound manager. So you can manage all of your sound channels in Windows through an app that is associated. You don't have to buy any other equipment, but when you buy the Stream Deck Plus. So you can actually define your different volume levels on these buttons if you're doing, especially editing and mixing stuff in post-production. That's also super cool.
I love it for like mixing comms with program audio and multiple zooms, even without the virtual mixer, because they implemented a plugin that goes into the Windows audio mixer and just moves it there. So I have a button that opens up like on my Stream Deck Plus, all the apps I can swipe through, and then I can just change different Zoom calls, Unity, my program output all with knobs or muted. It's really great.
Wow. Okay.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Anything else in particular? We've done it again. Gosh, it doesn't feel like 3 hours, but it's been just over 3 hours, guys. We do it week after week. Anyways, I hope this was helpful as far as a topic and a focus, and really it's a bit of a combined topic, right? It's exposure to workflow, ZoomOSC as a software solution, behaviors of Zoom, which is what we focus on, and Companion, which is an animal of its own, right? And some people dig deep, some people don't. I think I'm kind of in the middle there. Certainly not super deep, but I've made a lot of use of it, over time for sure with what I do for work, and yeah, it's good stuff. So it it just keeps getting better. The OSC library and ISO library just keeps getting better all the time. So it's super exciting, and really just wanted to share the basics, and we'll just keep stepping it up. I created a button with the initial intentions. I'm looking at it right now. That's it's kind of that we're jumping into a meeting. People are going to be coming in a half an hour. Have a button that says secure the meeting, right? Or meeting pre-start or something like that, where it got as far as a couple of actions, but one is enable waiting room, two is disable users to unmute, and just going through the checklist. You can start records, you can stop records, and there's just, you can send people to, if you had, if they were on the first page and you had a gallery view of those folks, or if you can have the sensitivity to a mic that's unmuted, and so because a mic that's unmuted, you can build buttons that are sensitive to that. So right now, but when you have that sensitivity, then you can mute them. But if they keep doing it, you can throw them to the waiting room, or you can remove them. There's just a lot of flexibility that is available. So we'll just continue to grow ourselves into the library of options and so forth. Andre, looks like you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hey Jeff. I got a slightly different topic question. How heavy are you using ZoomISO, and are you very happy with it, or have issues of several kinds? And do you use it as NDI or SDI? I believe NDI, as you use vMix.
Yeah. So I use vMix. I wouldn't call myself a heavy user of it, but when I do, leverage it, commonly it's for, demo or small meetings or whatnot to either the industry or potential customers, showing them some things, and, we'll be in a Zoom naturally meeting, but my presentation is spotlight me and turn the Zoom into a whole different experience and turn our conversation into a produced result. And so I'll pull them out, I'll pull me out, and we'll put them back in and spotlight it. And they're like, what? We're still in Zoom, but the whole feel changes. And so that's mine. I'm not a hardware user. I'm an NDI user on it. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Don't know if that's helpful to you or not, but
yeah. Do you? But is it reliable for you? And do you use it like in 720 or 1080, the ISO feeds? And,
I do 1080. I do. I have. I would say I haven't left the reliable category of 4 1080s out of my Mac M1 Mini, and my limitation, I'm certainly not hitting the limitation, but I pushed my network hard just to do that teaser video this week because I found a site of the dude who was making the silly faces and all. Hey, there's these model sites that's what they do. They do expression videos, and so I just grabbed a few of those, and so I grabbed 4 of those. I edited them. I keyed out the backgrounds in Premiere. Then I built a custom background for it, so I had to have different colors, and added the words speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, speaker 4. And then I'm like, well, how do I host these so that my multiple devices can be in the meeting individually? And so I dropped all 4 of them into vMix and assigned all 4 of my outputs to be NDI outputs in vMix so that they were on my network. Then on each of my devices that I had join the Zoom meeting that I fired up, I'd run webcam input, the NDI virtual cam or webcam input, depending on what platform you're on, I guess. but I would tell it that, make this NDI feed a webcam, and did that on each of the systems. And then I'd fire up Zoom, they'd join the Zoom meeting, their camera became that input feed, which was the NDI feed that was, being produced by vMix. And I hammered my little switch. Just in this office, I've got a 8-port Unify switch, and the bandwidth over, the longer it ran, the harder everything was working. And that was just those 4. But I had something else. I had desktop capture via vMix. I think it was vMix desktop capture. And so I was capturing 3 monitors and sending those out, as well over NDI, and they were being consumed. And so the problem isn't that you've, published them. The bandwidth problem or constraints begin when you consume, so if there's somebody that's a device that's subscribed to those feeds, then all of a sudden you've got real bandwidth usage. And so my network choked down for the first time, actually, that I pushed it pretty hard. And my vMix machine was, I don't think I've ever seen this machine at 70-75%, but it was getting CPU hammered because there was NDI's all CPU, it's not GPU, right? And so it was hammering my processors pretty good.
One additional question: when you said you do some presentations for potential customers, how do you handle the audio, and do you feed like the produced video back as Spotlight into the meeting? And how do you handle the audio from the panelists, so to say, that speak with you, that come into vMix and go back into the meeting? Or do I have do I think it wrong?
No, you're fine. Commonly I'm meeting with one person, so it's like it's a one-on-one. So that's kind of a non-issue. They don't hear themselves in their Zoom natively anyways, right? And I'm not sending their feedback because mix minuses and vMix are really easy to produce as well. So that's
because I thought about if I have a meeting where all the silent participants are in and some panelists, if I produce a picture with ZoomISO and ATEM or vMix, feed it back into the meeting, I have like an audio delay issue, maybe because the participants hear the audio directly from Zoom and see the video from me, and this is delayed.
Yeah, and I've been there. I definitely have been there, but I just bring the point. Hey, I want to show you something, but understand this is quick on the fly. It'll look good, but this is in production. This isn't the audio chain, and so we're going to have a slight delay because Zoom's faster than the way I'm routing this right now. So I think if you just let them be aware that in this in demo mode at this moment, if it's a planned and calendar demo, where, they could come back and say, hey man, you've had a week to prepare for this freaking meeting. And, then that kind of stuff happens, then that's that. But, for just a meeting, are you really going to ask a potential customer to, well, we like this part of the group to be in this meeting and you guys to be in that meeting, Zoom, and, so you can avoid all that. So it's a toughie.
Okay, thanks. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I just try and answer, Andre, even to your questions? Because we use ZoomISO. We 8 feeds, but we have a gigabit network, and the vMix machine is connected to a 10 gigabit port on the switch. So I see a lot of traffic in that area. And we haven't had an issue in terms of stability. So it's stable. I've not seen issues in that area. However, I haven't used it with the new version with audio channels. And that's something that I don't admit to. Yeah, so we've done the video, but we haven't done the audio on that yet.
Okay, copy.
Yeah, in terms of having 2 meetings, in other words, we've done meetings and large webinars where we've had to bring in the produced material that we're showing to the attendees in the webinar back to the speakers that are in the meeting. And believe it or not, we actually did a 2 button on a Stream Deck just to switch on and off the audio back and forward every time we switched from something that we didn't want to go back to the main meeting. We would actually cut off the audio on a Stream Deck manually. Yeah, manually. Someone would sit there and just switch it.
And did you like mute Zoom, or did you cut the audio in vMix?
We muted Zoom and then.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And admittedly, in that session, we also had a lot of pre-recorded sessions, so that also helped us with the cutting down on the feedback.
Yeah.
I'm playing with my ZoomISO right now.
Robert, so you have the vMix and the ZoomISO machine on the 10 gig port?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
We have a big Cisco switch, and it only has 2 10 gigabit ports, and one is for the ISO machine and one is for the vMix machine. Everyone else is on 1 gigabit, and it was fine. I mean, it's perfect. There's no issues at all.
Do you usually have an ISO backup machine running, or like a usual client backup machine running? Because I would like to use ZoomISO V2 as a production tool, but as of now, I don't feel comfortable with it because it seems to be not as reliable as I have to have it for a customer-produced show. And so I'm thinking about using one ZoomISO and using maybe 3 or 4 Zoom drones, regular Zoom machines as backups. But that's like, I really don't want to do this because it's so much material. But at the moment, I don't trust ZoomISO, so to say.
That is exactly the way we do it. We have screen scrapers that are just sitting in the background, and they've already set up, and we've pinned the speakers, and they're sitting there with NDI. So the vMix machine is actually getting 2 NDI feeds of the speakers. One is backup and one is production. But yes, it takes a lot of resource in terms of setting it up, testing it, and then also to make sure that you're not feeding twice from the same thing, because it gets a bit confusing when you look at screens and you see the same person who you're actually dealing with.
I know what you mean.
And the other thing is, when we've never had to use the backup, but when we've practiced it, it's messy.
And what I especially don't like about ZoomISO is the ZAC tokens thing, or the like login process that uses much more time than the regular Zoom. So if your ISO crashes, it uses, needs some time. Or Jonas, do you know if the ZAC token is like really functional? And could you tell me how to use it?
Yeah, ZAC tokens work. You need to build a little app for it, or have someone host it for you that you can log on to get the ZAC token. The problem also is if your ZAC token is no longer valid after X amount of time, I think it's 24 hours. For normal users, for custom create users, it's like 7 days or something. Yeah, but there are no like just ready-made tools right now that can do it. Because as a whole process, you as a developer have to go publish anything for Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
So Jeff, I wouldn't be myself if I didn't mention something about interpretation. So we've been testing ZoomISO and trying to get the interpretation feeds out of the users. And the guys at Luminal have told us that the Zoom SDK doesn't support the the interpretation channels yet, so they can't pull it out. So it's not available. And the funny thing is that's talking about stability. If you do try and grab the interpretation channels and switch the user, the whole thing hangs. That's a sensitive point, and you got to reboot, which is that's the only, Andre, in terms of stability, that's the only issue I've ever had with ZoomISO.
Could you please explain? If you try to pull the audio from one of the interpreters?
Yeah, if I pull the audio, if I grab an interpreter, for example, on a machine, and that person isn't an interpreter yet, I can get the audio and the video, but no problem. If I make him an interpreter, as soon as I do that, ZoomISO freezes, yeah, and you're stuck.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Yeah. So you can't even define anyone who has the role of an interpreter as one of your feeds from in ZoomISO. So, but we did that in a testing ground, so we didn't have any implications in terms of.
And Zoom didn't end up having a problem with it, but it was ISO that like physically choked. It was okay.
It choked, and you could see it on the NDI monitor that suddenly the whole thing just went down. There was nothing coming out of the ZoomISO machine, and I physically had to reboot the Mac Mini.
And that's too bad. And, one of the reasons why ZoomISO yet seems to be still in beta. It's still in beta and not 100% production. Yeah, this is a specific case.
Very specific.
Very, very specific. But so my testings with ZoomISO weren't satisfying. Maybe 70% or something. I had several crashes. I had several logins again, or when you, like, for example, have the engine running and change the number of outputs, it crashes immediately. So if you accidentally click on the output tab and hit a different number, it crashes. And several things, and also the not refreshing population of gallery buttons in the Stream Deck, and the issue that if you once have the active speaker view and not the gallery view, that seems to bring ZoomISO to not populate the buttons anymore in the right order. Not with ZoomOSC like Jeff showed today, but with ZoomISO. This is my experience.
I will test that. I haven't seen that, but I will test that.
And it could also be, I'm not sure if I'm on the latest version. Maybe I have to check this. Maybe I'm on a beta version before the actual, the latest version.
And are you on an Apple with an M chip?
Yes, it's an M1 Mac Mini, freshly bought for ZoomISO.
And yeah, check the latest version, because I know there was some issues with M chips in some versions of the software.
And also I've noticed that with the latest version, the operating system is critical. Yeah, you need to really make sure that you've got the right version of operating system, no later than. And I don't remember which one it is.
So like Monterey, not Ventura, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Frank's note in the chat caused me to start looking at the release notes. His note in particular, which is going to be in here as well, but we'll use this as a wrap up, I think. But his note points out support for multiple input channels, audio input channels. For Windows, Mac OS, users can enable an additional option under client audio settings, allowing them to select multiple audio inputs. That's coming on the 16th.
Yeah, I might have to go drink 8 glasses of water.
Why?
I'm under NDA, so I can only talk about water.
Oh, I got you. Well, some of these notes are out here as well that we can look at. I mean, this one of the new meeting. I say warning if you need it to be a warning. New meeting chat experience default setting will be on for most accounts, and so if you don't want formatting and all that jazz with your chat, you may need to find that and shut it off come the 16th. Breakout rooms 100 will be enabled for all accounts. That's new for sure. I've called that in and requested it several times. And every breakout room. So the maximum capacity of breakout rooms has been increased for all accounts, supporting up to 100 breakout rooms with a maximum capacity of 1,000 per breakout room. And I wrote about this. I said, Andy, I said, does this mean that I can have like 100,000 people in a meeting? Because 100 breakout rooms times 10,000 per breakout room. And anyways, it also, and the answer is, I mean, he understood where I was coming from. He didn't deny it, but he went and validated that that needs to be rewritten. And they did the very next day, actually. But they rewrote it online. And so it's not. It's, go create you got 1,000 limit in the main session. Go ahead and create 100 breakout rooms and move all 1,000 people to one breakout room. That's its maximums, right? And without any other distribution. This also affects the pre-assigned limits, raising them also to 100 rooms and 1,000 participants. So that's good and coming. Updates, the webinar, self-enablement of automated captions. Interpreter can move the language interpretation window. What do you think of that, Robert?
Yeah, that's super important because the bar has always been in a fixed position. So if someone's sharing a screen and the interpreter's looking at a presentation and there's got its bar over one of the key speaker names, you're stuck. You have to wait. You just can't do anything.
Yeah, true. Support for multiple audio inputs. I just read that one from Frank.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how that manifests if there's multiple audio channels getting into the Zoom session, and then the user can pick the ones they want to listen to. What implications does that have for live translation?
Yeah.
That's going to be super interesting because if it does what I think it may do, and Jason can't talk about, then what we're going to be able to do is, if a user logs in and he wants the Spanish channel, he doesn't go and have to choose the Spanish channel. We can already give him a default feed of the Spanish channel, for example. And that's always been an issue because the default feed is the main, what we call the floor channel. Yeah? And if you want to listen to the interpretation, you have to go and specifically choose a channel. But we can, if this is going in the direction what I think it is, then we'll be able to send out something that will allow the user to log in and have his default channel already set for him. That's my hope more than my understanding.
Yeah. Says camera off avatars. Virtual avatars can be enabled and animated based on user speech, even with video disabled. What's the difference? If I have an avatar on, my camera may as well be off. I mean, you can't see me.
But
anyways.
it'll mimic your reactions. If your eyes blink, if your head, if you nod up and down, the avatar will mimic. Like if your camera's watching you, but you're not sending your camera input into Zoom, and you nod your head, the avatar will nod its head. So it's a little more interactive.
If that's a change, because that change, if that's an actual change, to me, that would almost feel like the server used to interpret my eyes, and now they've moved that down to the client because it can do it without me sending my video. I don't know if they had to change anything or not, but even if video's disabled, yeah.
I haven't seen it in practice, so I'm not sure, but
yeah.
Okay.
Transfer Zoom app to local Zoom room. Meeting features, additional enhanced. Meeting participants can react to messages with emojis and reply in threads. Oh yeah, reply in threads. I saw an example of this. So they're indented and threaded to the original message and so forth, which I can, as a host, I can see that as a significant benefit. If you had to chase down an offending message and it had tons of "hey, shut ups" after it, and you kill the offending and you get to kill all the shut ups at the same time, maybe if it's threaded.
Jeff, it's enabled in this meeting, the threading.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
I know.
So there comes a
chat.
chat from me, and if you click on the one that I just sent, you can reply to it, and it appears as in a thread. We were playing with that early when you opened the room.
If I simply reply, next one who
you find my the one that I just sent, and then there's the three dots where you can quote. Yeah, see, like Frank added to it.
So if I quote, it keeps it in the thread.
Right. And then if I do something new here,
it doesn't look threaded.
Let me go back.
I mean, it quotes, but it's not threading.
Let me go back up here to the top. We had yeah, I don't know if you still got it, Jeff, because you had some tech issues earlier, but like early on there was, let's see, where is this? John, Betsy. Yeah, it quotes. It doesn't, right. Yeah, it doesn't like indent and keep that thread going. And that's okay, because if it did that, you would have to scroll back up to keep track of that conversation and then scroll down to track the newer conversation. So the quote feature, as it's properly called in this, it allows you to indicate what it is that you're responding to.
Yeah.
So if somebody thinks, hey, this is great, and then they say, me too, well, now you actually know what they are agreeing to.
So yeah, if I turn on my formatting bar, you got numbered list, increase the indentation, quote, clear style,
there's some
bold,
colors and
italic,
stuff.
underline, strike through, colors, links, then paragraph in bulleted lists. Yeah, pretty flexible. So I'm wondering if the threading's coming though. So I mean, it sounds like threading's coming on whatever date this release note was.
I think what you see here is what it's going to be. I saw some. They published some demo video earlier this week, and it looks like this.
I've actually seen the Zoom chat not in the meeting, and you've got threads and you can close them and open them. So it's like aggregate them. So it's different, definitely different.
Yeah, it does keep them connected. But like you say, once you start threading them, how can you have this bottom-up approach, and make any sense to the whole thing? Be interesting. Yeah, it should be interesting to see how that manages.
And Q&A is coming to meetings. I don't know if you saw that.
What is?
Q&A. So if you do Zoom webinar, the Q&A function, they're bringing that into meetings.
Yep.
So you don't have to do questions via chat. Although with this little quote feature, that makes that a little easier too.
Yeah, Q&A in meetings and being able to, vote on them and so forth is going to be, I think, quite welcomed.
That's interesting because I've got Q&A in my meetings already, so I don't understand how it's coming. I guess they're rolling it out slowly as usual.
To other account levels, yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot of confusion about Q&A in meetings because before they released it, they didn't specify which license types it would be constrained to. And there was quite a bit of complaints from the education sector when we didn't get it. And I think there's conversation going on at Zoom about maybe they should spread it out a little bit more.
Yeah, because a lot of the education licenses do not have webinars. So the Q&A and the meeting functionality would be super helpful.
Yeah, especially for instructors. A big complaint for instructors is that the chat, if you have 300 people in your meeting, the chat is impossible to manage without helpers, and lots of instructors don't have helpers. But Q&A is more useful because people can vote the important questions to the top. So if someone's asking a stupid question and you really want to know when the exam is, that'll probably make it to the top, and the instructor can have an easier time seeing those questions.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Jeff, I know we're going to be finishing off shortly, but before we do run off, could you post the link for us to register for the Sunday event? I'd really like to attend that.
Yeah, I can look that up and get
Don't
that
know
out
where to
there.
get the link, the
Yeah,
registration.
Q&A, I'm looking on our account, this account, and Q&A and meetings is in my portal. It's just not turned on. So that's out there. That's cool. Get that turned on.
And one more question, Jeff, if I can throw at you. In ZoomISO, in OSC, have you figured out a way of defining buttons that will insert a specific text, predefined text into the chat?
Buttons themselves versus generic OSC. I mean, we know we can do it with generic OSC, and I think the manual speaks to using generic OSC as well. But let me take a look here real quick.
So for example, if someone's having an issue with his sound, you could have a button that says, if you're having an issue with the sound, read this. And you have a sound help. Mic help.
See if I can find, reclaim, and not in that library. Let me check here. User. I mean, we know we can send, it just, if there's a preset to send someone, I think this is the waiting room. Yeah, that's the waiting room. I'll keep digging in the, let's see, presets. Broadcast. Yeah, that's digging. I know the manual talks about, sending chat, but I'm pretty sure it uses the references the generic OSC to handwrite. And so, can we get maybe some? Because I can imagine from what you've said is, if you had. Was your example audio,
like
audio or
help,
unmuting? So they had an issue.
Help buttons, really. Help for this, help for that. And then they can just be links that people go and open a document and read.
But it would be based on recognizing that that person needs help and sending a pre-canned message to that person, but doing it by selecting them and pressing this help message button, and it sends a direct message in chat to them. I'll have to chase that one down.
I mean, if you've seen it written, this in the instructions, then I'll sit down and read it through. I haven't.
Yeah,
I just saw. Tie it to a reaction, like watch for whatever reaction, you know, exclamation point react. I'm looking through the reactions menu to kind of see if there's one that looks like help. But you know, if you throw up, let's see, I don't know, something like this, which is not help, but whatever the help icon is, right? So then OSC would see that and then would say, oh, okay, now just like Jeff has the raise your hand, move to position 1, recognize that, change the button, something along those lines. I would think the logic would be the same.
That's really a good approach to it, Jason. Thank you, because I'll figure out which of the reactions we could use and say, just tell people if you have an issue, press this reaction and
And then just be mindful that in your account settings too, you have expanded reactions or whatever the non-expanded reactions are. And I don't know if that's on a per user basis. So assuming that it is, because you designed to the lowest common denominator, is okay, in that limited reactions, which one of these is the help symbol? You know, or maybe it's the no button, or
oh, here we go.
Or the go slower button. You know, like I'm not getting this help.
So this is this a selected person? That's the question. Let me try something here. So let me put the Mac
actually
on.
says, if I was just reading that, it says send message in chat to a participant, not to all participants. So it must be.
Yeah. Well, and I found a preset in Companion that references that. So here, if I go to preset, let's see, user chat via DM. That's what I'm thinking. So chat via DM. And it says chat via direct message, right? And so the message could be, I'll just say, looks like you need help, right? And question mark. Now, commonly, these presets have had a little note along the top that says, if you want this to go to who is pre-selected, just leave it blank, but that's not. Because this, I would think this should be asking for like to who, right? And so I'm wondering if it's assuming selected or not. But anyways, so I'm going to test that. I'm going to say, Robert, you can see the bottom yellow button on my Stream Deck. I've selected you.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I've selected you, then I'm going to hit that chat.
Yes, and I got it.
You did?
Yep.
Well, that's kick-ass.
And I got it from you.
So Jason, I'm going to select you, and I'm going to hit chat.
Shazam. There it is.
Now I'm going to hit Robert, Jason, who else? Frank is on screen.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hit chat.
There it is.
Did all three of you get it?
No, I didn't get anything.
Okay. Let me clear spots. Robert, Frank, Jason, chat.
No, I did. I got it this time.
But did Jason?
No.
So the first, Robert, you were the first one I selected.
So it only so
let me
DM.
clear all spots, and I'm going to select Frank first this time, but add Robert and Jason chat. And I'm assuming Frank's going to get that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to clear just to super confirm Jason, Frank, Robert. That's in order. Chat and Jason should get that one. So it's not it's not working through a multi-selected list. It is just one at a time, which is that's fine.
But could you add logic in that statement, like based on, so you already have hand raise logic. So could you say if hand raise, then send DM? Looks like you need help.
I don't know. I'm Companion's adding a little bit of logic, processing, but I'm not super familiar with it. I know that once you start thinking and want to produce conditional results, that's where you add Isidore to the mix. And so it takes the data, decides what to do with it, and then sends it back, if you will.
Okay.
So, I mean, the chat is there if there's some way for you to detect, and if it was a large meeting, for them to end up in the detection zone so you could see them and send, select and send, that is working. I wonder, here, let me go to.
And you could put anything in that message field, right? It could be a URL.
Yeah, I just typed what I wanted to type. So you could
link to the support articles, FAQs, whatever.
Yeah. So you could have, what I have is just a chat button. I could have message 1, message 2, message 3, message 4. They would all be send chat, send chat, send chat, send chat. The only thing that makes them unique is the actual message itself. So yeah, that would be what I'd see. Let me look at.
That's handy. That's handy. Because right now I'm doing that via a copy and paste. Have a document open up on the side, and the presenter says, here's a link to our FAQs. So I've copied that, pasted in the chat. And then if you want our support articles, that's located here, copy, paste. But if I had these hot buttons like that.
That's exactly what I'm doing, Jason. So this has been really good. This is something new for me.
There's chat via, and then there's right now in the newest module, there's a chat via DM, which is what we're using.
And
I'll double check that. And then there's a chat to everyone. Chat DM, chat to everyone. And then there's
that
a
makes
chat
sense.
deprecated.
What if, of course, this is a meetings command, right? So in meetings, you have chat to everyone or chat direct. In webinar, you also have the chat to panelist. So they're not everyone. It's not a DM. It's panelist, which is a one-to-many message.
Yeah, built into Zoom. Yeah,
correct.
But OSC, you always have to lend that question: is have they exposed it in the API so that OSC can write to it? And even though you can do it in Zoom and webinar, it doesn't necessarily mean it's exposed, or there's been time to write to it. Hard to call.
Right.
Send a chat to who. Yeah, so where you could select, well, and even you could do a selection, but this command and structure it's the deprecated one, so that I wouldn't invest in that one. So right now it's everyone or direct message, and it assumes the one selected individual. Yeah. All right. But, get creative, right?
Can be a time saver.
And when it comes to tech support, it's usually not a group of people. I mean, commonly it's somebody who's having an issue. So if there's a way you can sense that.
You know what, Jeff? I find especially in our events with interpretation, it's usually the latecomers who missed the instructions, the housekeeping instructions at the beginning, that have all the questions. So that's where this repetitive stuff comes in. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But I've also learned that there's no issue. There's not an. I've been actually posting the help to everyone instead of just to the individual who's stuck, because it turns out that some people didn't notice it or didn't listen to the housekeeping, or people came in late and didn't have the courage to ask for help, and there's a number of different cases there. So
yeah.
But this is good that we can predefine them, even if we have to send them out to everyone or select a person. That's really cool.
Well, and that's the thing. It's sometimes our solutions are nothing more than minimizing the workload, not getting rid of it, right? Just minimize it. I mean, heck, if you can shave off 20, 30% by, kind of almost automating those, and then you still have to pay special attention, you still decrease the number of special attention ones that you have to hand type, if you will. So it's a step in the right direction for sure. Very good. Or web pages, kind of preset web pages that have like full-on explanations or videos or whatever, and your chats are not trying to write a small book, is they're just sending links, to these.
Let me just explain that the complexity when you're doing interpretation, you've got to have a set of instructions in each language, because you're sending it to the person. So it's going to help a lot. This is going to help a lot already. So thank you.
Yeah, cool.
I'm going to call it quits, guys. Thank you. It's been fun.
Appreciate
your knowledge and wisdom. Oh, well,
It's 9 o'clock in the morning here, so I'm going to say good night as well. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your wisdom.
Hey, yeah, good seeing you, Jason. See you next week, maybe.
Jeff, thanks very much.
Yeah, pleasure hanging. Love learning. Love sharing some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff, I just practiced again this week. So I feel fresh, but I certainly don't know the depth of it, but help where I can. So it is, it's been a good time. So we'll spread the word. Appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend.
And please don't forget to send us the link for the event on Sunday.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah. Maybe not in the chat now, because hardly anyone will get it. Maybe.
I will. I'll send it out. I'll send it out. I don't think there's any problem with me sending it out and promoting Trevor and Madeline to the email list that I do. The email list, I actually get the absolute best response from. So I will. I'll send it there and I'll promote their stuff. It's great, and it's not just about music or playing violin or viola. It's all the tech that he's wrapped into it, and it's the interactive ability that he's given a Zoom get together is absolutely fascinating. So and I think it's very unique.
What fascinated me with it, Jeff, is that he's so focused on what he's doing, and he's using every single bit of technology to get what he's doing. Here we tend to be sort of very unfocused, wide, doing all sorts, being capable of doing all sorts of things. But with that music event, it was so focused. It was really good. Not going to miss this. So I'm going to wait for your email. I will read your email when you send it, Jeff.
Good. I think he sent out a promo, so I'll just I'll link. I'll have a few words to say, but I'll just put his YouTube promo video out because it's actually good, and it I think a lot of the content of that promo is his visit to the Zoom Test Kitchen, just clips and snippets of it and so forth. So anyways, it'll be good. Yeah. If you can support him. I think it's Sunday evening at 7:00 Eastern. So that's going to be awfully late for Robert.
Maybe early in the morning.
You might have to do the replay on that one, Robert. But anyways, it's good. Yeah, him and I. He's been emailing or messaging me during this meeting, and because he had, so we were connected yesterday, getting my Stream Deck remotely connected to his network and this and that. But he was on some older ZoomOSC ISO libraries. And so he's been working the last 24 hours trying to get everything updated. He had a lot of old commands that just literally all of them had to be, from feedback to actions, that all had to be, he had to find what's the new commands and then, get everything changed and so forth. So he had a lot of work between yesterday and today, but he wrote me and said he's got it all updated. So we're going to test that again tonight. So, well, very good. We may see you next week. I will send out that email about the performance from Trevor and Madeline. And beyond that, we'll call it a wrap. I'm good with that. All right. See you
Bye,
guys.
Jeff. Bye, Frank.
See you.